Chapter 689. The wind carried with it the fragrance of the grains. Those with a good sense of smell would notice that as time passed, the fragrance of the grains in the air grew thicker. More and more birds flew over. Some of them had already started pecking at the fields nearby, but they were quickly caught and killed by the guards. The people from the other side of the sea had experienced the harvest of the 1,000 grain gold and were already mentally prepared. But the others were different. Although they had been told a few days ago about the possibility of this happening, it was not as intense as witnessing it with their own eyes. Especially the drumming tribesmen who came to help. They were still puzzled. It was just harvesting grains. Was there a need to mobilize so many people? Now, as they looked at the dense flock of birds gathering around them, they felt their scalps twitch. Thank goodness we didn't farm. The drumming tribesmen all thought at the same time. Whether it was the wanderers hiding in the caves or the Yinjiao tribesmen on the mountain, they all saw the birds flapping their wings outside the house. Although most of them were not fearsome beasts, there were too many of them. They were everywhere outside. Old Ku heard the sounds of the traps he set outside, accompanied by the chirping of the birds. Caesar and the other fearsome beasts were busy at the top and bottom of the mountain. Soon, their mouths were full of bird feathers. But the strange thing was, the flock of birds only flew around the edges of the fields. They did not come close to the center of the 1,000 grain gold field. This scene was especially obvious when looking down from the sky. Why don't the birds fly over there? We looked at the situation below and asked his 6 companions. They know that it's the most dangerous place. After all, the Yinjiao tribesmen guarding there are the strongest in the fields. I heard that the Yinjiao tribesmen often hunt fearsome beasts. They must have a strong killing intent. Maybe the birds have sensed it too, one of them guessed. No, I feel that there must be something there that can make those birds afraid. Another person expressed his different opinion. Something dangerous? The first person sneered. Are you talking about a king beast? If there was a king beast there, there wouldn't be so many Yinjiao tribesmen. It can't be a king beast. Wu He agreed. He had personally experienced the king beast incident and knew that the rumors were not as exaggerated as they seemed. The Yinjiao tribesmen would not send so many people to guard a place where a king beast appeared. Then, what could be the reason? The others did not understand. Maybe the Yinjiao tribesmen made some medicine to repel the birds? Someone suddenly said. The others paused. Thinking about it this way, it was really possible. Speaking of which, none of the fearsome beasts that the Yinjiao tamed are here. We scanned the area again. He found out that the giant mountain eagle that chased after them only flew between the forest and the trading point. At most, it went to the mountain in the core residential area of the Flaming Horn tribe. It didn't fly to the Flaming Horn's farmlands even once. That has to be it. Thinking about it this way, the others felt that this should be the closest to the truth. They knew that in the fields of some slave owners, there were times when they would use some medicine to expel pests and birds, but those prescriptions had always been in the hands of very few people and would not be easily spread out. If the Yinjiao tribe could get the seeds from Jeju, then perhaps they also had the medicine to repel the insects? No wonder the long-winged birds don't want to go near that place. We nodded. He agreed with that guess. Fortunately, the long-winged birds were their beast slaves. Even if they were unwilling, they would do as they were told. They just had to be careful when the time came. The medicine was only effective against insects, so it shouldn't have much of an effect on humans. Come, take some medicine first. One person took out a small wooden bottle from the cloth bag he carried with him. After opening it, he distributed the pills to the others. These pills were not specific to any particular medicine, but they could serve as a buffer. Even if they were poisoned, as long as they were treated in time, they would be fine. They were just going to steal a handful of grains. They weren't going to eat poison, so they would be fine. Quick, get ready. I feel that the Yinjiao people are about to make a move. Wu said. When the others heard this, they quickly gathered their thoughts and focused on what was happening below. In the 1,000 grain gold field, Xiao Xin quickly glanced to the left. It looked peaceful, but no one dared to go near it. There wasn't even a flying insect. There was a big bat there. It had been resting on a mountain 2 days ago, but since last night, the bat leader had been in the field. Even during the day, which it hated, it didn't leave the field. However, it no longer hung on the tallest leaves. Instead, it was hanging on the lower leaves of the 1,000-grain gold plants. Because every 1,000-grain gold plant was very big, the leaves on the top spread out. Even if they were long and narrow, when there were so many of them, they could cover some of Yangguang's vision. The bat leader hung in the shadows. If one didn't see it resting there with their own eyes, as long as they didn't look in that direction, it would be hard to notice its presence. At least, the guards outside the 1,000-grain gold field didn't notice anything strange. Patter, patter, on the heavy grain ears, grape-sized grains of the 1,000-grain gold swayed and collided with each other. The grains didn't have any obvious changes on the outside, but on the inside, they were slowly maturing. Xiao Xian's eyes flashed. He suddenly blew the wooden whistle in his mouth. The slightly long whistle wasn't loud. Instead, it sounded calm. But after this whistle, the air seemed to tighten. The atmosphere became tense and stagnant. This was the whistle for everyone to get ready. Whoosh! A sharp and hurried whistle followed. It was like the sound of a starting gun. The people who were waiting in all directions instantly shot out like arrows leaving the bow, heading straight for the valley that had been allocated beforehand. This was indeed more like a battle where every second mattered. The scythe made of animal bones easily cut through the tall stalks of 1,000-grain gold. The people behind him quickly collected the 1,000-grain gold and put them into large bags made of animal skin. Because there were too many 1,000-grain gold planted this time, the survival rate was much higher than the first time. Therefore, they didn't have time to cut the grains individually. They cut them all together. After they were done, they would find a place to deal with them. Otherwise, the surrounding birds would cause a lot of trouble. Everyone's assigned area and route had been planned beforehand. They wouldn't bump into each other while cutting, and they wouldn't take the same route. They would try their best to save as much time as possible. Except for one place. Xiao Xian didn't let anyone near the bat leader's area. That was the biggest variable. As long as they didn't provoke it, the harvest could be completed smoothly. If someone accidentally went over and provoked the bat leader, it would be more troublesome than being attacked by a flock of birds. At the same time, the surrounding flocks of birds that didn't dare to come near seemed to be fighting for their lives. They screeched and rushed over. Looking down from the sky, they could see a flock of birds forming an encirclement. They were closing in on Yinjiao's most heavily guarded field. This is our chance. Wu He and the others were excited. The blood in their bodies seemed to boil. Under the insistence of Wu He and the others, the long-winged bird could only reluctantly make a coo sound and then slowly fly towards that direction. As the flock of birds neared, the bat leader, hidden in the shadows of the 1,000-grain gold valley, opened its blood-red eyes. Whoosh! The wings wrapped around its body spread open. There was a slight sound of wind. In such a noisy environment, the sound of the wind didn't even cause a ripple. No one would hear it. But the moment it spread its wings, the flock of birds that were closing in on it suddenly stopped. It was as if someone had pressed the pause button. A strong, murderous aura came out of the 1,000-grain gold, especially in the air. The aura was directed at the birds that were flying close to it. The Yinjiao warriors who were busy harvesting the 1,000-grain gold valley were shocked by this sudden aura. The scythes in their hands almost fell out of their hands. A beast. After hunting for so many times, they could naturally tell whether it was a human or a beast. No, this was a normal beast. This was much stronger than the beasts they had seen before. The air was thick with the smell of blood. There wasn't a drop of blood in sight, nor was there any smell of blood, but it felt like they were in a bloody fog. At this moment, all the shouts, arrows, horns, bones, metal, and birdsong seemed to have been frightened and came to an abrupt end. Hiss! The sound was like the sound of air rushing past. It wasn't loud, but everyone in the field heard it. This voice made everyone's hair stand on end. It was as if there was a bloody fawn that was ready to move, a massacre about to happen. Under the noontime Yangguang, the field seemed to be cut off from Yangguang. They couldn't feel the slightest bit of warmth. There was only a chill that made them shiver, and their teeth chattered. In the air, Wu He and the others were still far away, but they could feel the strange aura. Wu He shuddered and almost fell off his long-winged bird. Not only the 7 of them, but the 7 long-winged birds also stopped flying forward like the other birds. If it weren't for their masters wanting to go over, they would have retreated a long time ago. The rhythm of their flapping wings also became chaotic, so much so that they rose and fell, almost causing the frightened people to fall off their backs. What is that? One of them stuttered. They had been through a lot. Even if they didn't have the ability to distinguish auras like the yin jiao, they could still sense that there was a dangerous creature there. They just didn't know if it was a human or a beast. Why do I have a bad premonition? Another person said, What's there? A human? Or a beast? Could it really be a king beast? Impossible. Well, he immediately denied it. Then he said with uncertainty, It shouldn't be. It definitely isn't the one that appeared last time. If it wasn't a king beast, then what was the source of that powerful aura? What secrets were the yin jiao hiding? The yin jiao are really cunning, someone said through gritted teeth. The others felt the same way. The yin jiao had a lot of secrets, but they didn't dare to rashly investigate. What we do? The other 6 looked to Wu He. Wu He's words sometimes made people want to beat him up, but some of his decisions were right. At times like this, they believed in Wu He's decision. Wu He solemnly looked down and said, Continue to wait. Those birds won't give up so easily. As long as they keep moving, then what yin jiao is hiding is definitely not a king beast. Even if there were tempting food in the area where a king beast appeared, normal beasts and ferocious beasts wouldn't dare to approach. However, the birds stopped for a moment, then began to pace back and forth, as if preparing for another attack. No, it really isn't a king beast. The person next to Wu He was overjoyed. For them, as long as it wasn't a king beast, then it was worth a risk. If it was a king beast, then they would leave without another word. No matter what secrets Yin Jiao had, no matter what treasures there were, they would leave immediately. Just like when the king's stoneworm appeared in the forest outside the trading point, Wu He threw down his cup and left. They would do the same. But there was no king beast now, right? So what if it was risky? They had taken more risks since they were young than the grains they ate. The 7 of them once again paid attention to the situation below, waiting for the movements of the birds to decide when to make their move. In the 1,000-grain gold field, the soldiers harvesting the crops had paused when the powerful aura appeared. However, Xiao Xin quickly reminded them to return to their task. No matter what danger there was, as long as the Great Elder was here, everything would be fine. After the incident with the king beast, the people of Yinjiao trusted Xiao Xian very much. Even if something happened, they wouldn't blame Xiao Xian. The Great Elder's motive was always for Yinjiao's good. Xian, those birds are flying over again. Ao pulled his bow and aimed an arrow at the sky. The flock of birds was too large. Even someone with good archery skills couldn't face such a large number of birds calmly. Wait, don't shoot for now. Pay attention to that side. Xiao Xian pointed his chin in the direction of the bat leader. The bat leader was starting to get angry. That was just a warning. After all, it was daytime and it didn't like to go out in the day. Flying beasts didn't like bows and arrows. Forget about the other fields, it was better not to shoot at the 1,000-grain gold field and the surrounding fields. After all, the bat leader might fly out at any time. If someone accidentally shot and angered the bat leader, this already busy harvest operation would be even more difficult to succeed. Ao thought about it and agreed. He put down his bow and focused on the bat leader's position. He and Xiao Xian didn't participate in the harvest operation directly. Instead, they stared at the bat leader. After all, no one knew what the bat leader was going to do. If something happened, they would be able to react immediately. In times of danger, those with high status and power would definitely be the ones to take the lead. The smell of blood in the air was getting thicker and thicker. If it wasn't for the valley around them, everyone would have thought that they were in a killing field. Some of the warriors' arms were shaking as they waved their sickles. This wasn't because they were timid. It was a psychological and physiological reaction. They were nervous. Under such strong pressure, they could still maintain their normal harvesting and not pull out their sickles to defend themselves. This was already very good. The speed of the flock of birds slowed down. Some birds started to retreat, some hesitated, and some continued to approach boldly, heading straight for the swaying golden grains. The birds that approached didn't immediately rush down, even when they were above the 1,000-grain gold field. However, these birds that had gathered gradually blocked Yang Guang from above. Just as the flock of birds above finally decided to swoop down, and the surrounding birds that were watching also spread their wings and prepared to shoot down. Whoosh! A black shadow flew out from the shadows of the valley, brushing past the golden grains and heading up. As it rushed up, invisible and inaudible sound waves were emitted. Bang! 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 The closest flying bird was directly turned into a cloud of blood mist. It didn't even have the time to let out a final cry of shock. When that figure charged towards the densest flock of birds, a blood-red color, accompanied by a series of explosions, spread out in the air like a crimson disk. The flock of birds that blocked Yang Guang's view was replaced by a bloody mist. Under Yang Guang's gaze, the mist spread out and landed on the field. If before it was only because of the strong aura that made people feel like they could smell blood, then now it was real blood. The people harvesting below, whether they were on the 1,000-grain gold field or the other fields nearby, the drumming warriors who came to help, the sentries on the watchtowers, etc., all saw the horrifying scene above the field. The bat leader's attack was only aimed at the flock of birds, but the people harvesting in the field were also affected. They had to stop what they were doing and cover their ears, feeling like their heads were being pierced by thousands of needles. Those who were further away were better off, but those who were closer to the 1,000-grain gold fields suffered the most. However, they were the strongest among the people in charge of harvesting. As long as the bat leader didn't target them, they could still handle it. They just felt uncomfortable. Ao clenched his bow tightly and looked up. He didn't care about the bloody mist falling on the ground, only focused on the battle above. No, it couldn't be called a battle. It was a one-sided massacre. A flock of birds lured by food and an enraged half-king beast. It was obvious who was stronger. There was a heavy grain hanging from Xiao Xin's head. The bloody mist from above covered the grains in a layer of red. Xiao Xin plucked a grain and wiped away the layer of blood on it with his finger, revealing the golden shell underneath. The 1,000-grain gold shell seemed to shine even brighter. Xiao Xin thought back to when he first found the nutrients needed for the growth of the 1,000-grain gold. He looked at the golden grain in his hand. Perhaps the growth and ripening of the 1,000-grain gold was destined to be accompanied by blood. This was a golden light born from blood. In the sky, the explosions no longer continued, but the bat leader did not seem to intend to let go of the birds that had angered it. It still did not stop chasing them, but this time it used its sharp claws and fangs. After the bloody mist, there would always be some shredded bird corpses. Some of the bird corpses were so shriveled that there wasn't even a drop of blood left. Some of them were even incomplete. It was obvious that the bat above was very cruel. The flock of birds seemed to have been woken up and scattered in all directions. Of course, there were still some bold ones. While the bat leader was chasing other birds, they went to the 1,000-grain gold field, thinking that they could achieve their goal. Unfortunately, the Yinjiao people were already there. The harvesting continued. The people in the sky and on the ground were also busy. Wu He and the others, who had been avoiding the bat leader's attack, saw their chance to attack. The Yinjiao people and the terrifying bat didn't notice them. Chance! Go! Quick, quick, quick! Grab a handful before the grains are all gone. Chapter 690. The tense atmosphere at the Yinjiao plantation didn't affect the other side of the Flaming River. Even though they couldn't see the Yinjiao plantation from the Flaming River, they could still see the strange movements in the sky. The flock of birds there was too eye-catching. Some people who came to see the Flaming River Bridge were arguing with the Yinjiao soldiers guarding the bridge. They came all the way here just to take a look at the bridge and personally experience what it felt like to be built by a king beast. However, the Yinjiao people didn't let them pass. If they didn't let them get on the bridge, what was the point of coming all the way here? Threats and promises were useless to the Yinjiao soldiers guarding the bridge. No matter what you said, their attitude was firm. As long as you weren't a Yinjiao, you weren't allowed to take a single step onto the bridge. Even though the soldiers guarding the bridge didn't stay at the headquarters to participate in the harvest, They knew that no outsiders were allowed to disturb them. These people said they were going to take a look at the bridge, but who knew if they would run straight to the Yinjiao headquarters? Their chief had already said this morning that no one who wasn't a Yinjiao was allowed to take a single step forward. More and more people from other tribes gathered around. The leader of the expedition team looked at the people behind him, then looked at the Yinjiao soldiers guarding the bridge. In terms of numbers, they had already outnumbered the Yinjiao soldiers. Why don't we just use force? From time to time, there were some noises from the crowd, increasing the tension in the air. You think you can stop us? If you don't let me see, then I'm going to see. The crowd pushed forward, and the people in front couldn't help but take 2 steps forward. The Yinjiao soldiers guarding the bridge immediately pointed their blades and spears at them. Most of the people in the expedition team weren't good people. They were already very impatient when the Yinjiao people didn't let them onto the bridge. They didn't believe in the exaggerated rumors about the Yinjiao people. Other than coming here to see the legendary bridge, they also wanted to test how capable the Yinjiao people were. Everything was just 1 step away, and the push from behind just now had become the trigger for the situation to explode. Just as the chaos was about to erupt, a loud bang suddenly came from above Yinjiao's headquarters. When they looked up, they saw a bloody explosion in the sky. The bloody scene extinguished the flames of anger in their hearts, and they all stopped what they were doing. Even the Yinjiao soldiers guarding the bridge turned their heads to look. They didn't know what had happened over there, but from the looks of it, it should be something good. After all, those that had exploded into a bloody mist were the flock of birds that had come to snatch the grains. What is that? Someone asked in a trembling voice. I don't know. I heard that it's the territory of the Yinjiao tribe. What happened in Yinjiao? I keep having the feeling that there's something scary over there. The person who spoke even shuddered. He wasn't the only one. Everyone else had the same feeling. After all, those who could join the expedition team and reach here safely were definitely not weak. The people who gathered around stopped clamoring to get on the bridge. Yinjiao seemed to be very dangerous, so they decided to observe the situation first. The guards looked at the headquarters worriedly. From here, they could only see the mountains at the headquarters and the surrounding forest. They couldn't see what was happening in the fields, so they couldn't leave. They could only pray in their hearts that everything would go smoothly over there. At the back of the crowd, a few people exchanged glances. They saw the surprise in each other's eyes, and they changed their plans at the last minute. Like the Chonglis, they also came from the other side of the sea, but they weren't as fast as the Chonglis. They originally planned to use these curious people to distract the Yinjiao guards so that they could sneak in with the others and take a look at the Yinjiao tribe. They didn't expect that it would be so dangerous over there. I heard that the Chonglis already sent people over there, someone said in a low voice. The others exchanged glances with each other. Everyone knew what was going on. Looking for trouble and looting a burning house was what the Chonglis did all the time. With the Chonglis here, Yinjiao definitely wouldn't be peaceful. They should wait and observe for a while. They didn't want to meet the Chonglis. On the other side of the bridge, Ta personally led a group of people to guard this side. If the people on the other side couldn't hold on, he would still be here. They definitely couldn't let those people come over today. Recently, because of the Flaming River Bridge, more people came to the Flaming River trading point. These people were also bolder. Some even wanted to test Yinjiao directly. How troublesome. The mission here was also very important, but Ta was also worried about the fields. Perhaps the others didn't know, but as one of the 2 leaders of Yinjiao, Ta knew about the Bat Leader. Because of this, he was even more worried. At the same time, above Yinjiao's fields, the bloody mist gradually dissipated. The surroundings were filled with broken feathers and bone fragments. The birds were either shot down, killed, or sucked dry. Their corpses fell to the ground one after another. While the Flaming Horn tribesmen were busy dealing with the stealing birds and the Bat Leader was chasing after the birds, 2 shadows suddenly dashed towards the Flaming Horn's farmland. They were running towards the 1,000-grain gold. Watch out! Be careful! The person who shot the birds shouted when he noticed the intruders in the air. Just as the Flaming Horn tribesmen drew their bows, a large black shield opened up above the figure that flew past them. The shield spun rapidly. This was the Chong Li's shield made of gum. It was much lighter than metal and stone. They usually disassembled this shield into multiple pieces and only put it back together before mission. The person behind the shield started to transform. Totem patterns appeared on his face and arms. Especially the arm that was holding the shield, it immediately swelled up. His muscles tightened, and green veins protruded. He held the two black shields firmly in each hand. The two people holding the shields were indescribably excited. Every time they were on a mission, they would feel this way. This kind of tense and exciting atmosphere made them so excited that they couldn't help but shout. Tuck, tuck, tuck. The arrows were blocked by the black shield. The arrowheads pierced into the shield, but they didn't bounce back or pierce through. They were stuck there. In order to save arrowheads, the Yinjiao people used wooden arrowheads when shooting ordinary birds. For larger birds, they used stone arrowheads. Only birds like ferocious beasts would use metal arrowheads. The Chong Li's people came so suddenly that the people holding the bows didn't have time to change the arrowheads. Therefore, the first batch of arrows were all made of wood. The arrowheads were stuck on the two black shields. There are also people who use stone arrowheads in order to shoot down the larger birds. In that instant, they also attacked, but the arrows they shot out were also unable to break through the strange black shield. They were also stuck on the shield, neither bounced off nor penetrated. The two figures holding the black shields became like hedgehogs in an instant. However, it didn't really hurt the people and birds behind the shields. Ao also intended to attack, but he saw another figure further away in that direction. The bat leader was sucking the blood of a ferocious bird. If he attacked, if he missed the target, the spear was likely to go directly to the bat leader. If he angered the bat leader, would it change its target to people on his side? However, because of that little bit of hesitation, Ao lost the chance to hit the target. It was very difficult for him to hit the target again. The chance was gone in a flash. Just as the two people behind the black shield were feeling complacent, a long spear with a green tip pierced through the air towards one of the shadows. The cyan spearhead fiercely stabbed into the black shield. The sharp tip of the blade pierced through the shield, and a part of the impact spread along the shield during the collision. The dense number of arrows stuck on the black shield were instantly shattered. Apart from the arrowheads that were still stuck on the shield, many of the arrowheads had already been shattered, and scattered. The spear that pierced the black shield didn't stop moving forward. The strong impact continued to push the spear forward and break the shield. At that moment, the person behind the black shield felt as if time had stopped. His pupils shrank because of the sudden shock. He could even hear the sound of friction between the spear and the shield. The place where the shield was broken seemed to be scorched by the high temperature. If the shield was of any other color, there might be a circle of scorch marks on the place where the spear broke through. There seemed to be a burning air entering his nose. The person behind the shield saw the blue spear that reflected the cold light getting closer and closer to him. He didn't even have time to react. It was too late. He didn't think. Fortunately, the spear brushed past his forehead in the end. At the same time, his hands that were holding the black shield, under the impact of the spear, seemed to have been attacked by the claws of a ferocious beast. Lacerations appeared on his hands, extending from a web between his thumb and index finger to the top of his arms. Blood spurted out from these wounds like arrows of blood. His whole body was also brought back and fell off the back of the long-winged bird. The hands that were holding the two black shields also loosened. The long-winged bird below him also lost its balance. It rolled down a few times before flying away in panic. It didn't stop even after taking an arrow to the butt. And the person who fell off the back of the long-winged bird was caught by his companion in the next moment and carried to the back of another long-winged bird. The person who was rescued stared blankly at the arm in his hand, then looked at the spear that fell with the shield. He couldn't help but swallow a few times. Just now, both of his arms were almost shaken off. What terrifying strength! And because they wanted to save him, the person who originally planned to create a diversion was exposed in advance. There's still someone else. They still have companions. However, just as everyone's attention was on the two people who came later, two more figures rushed in when no one was paying attention. They didn't directly rush into the center, But at the border, through the gaps exposed by the guards, they quickly flashed past. As they flew past, the person on the long-winged bird's back shook his arms. His originally normal arms shrunk in an instant, becoming as small as a child's. His sleeves fluttered in the wind, outlining the clear outline of his arm bones. He swung his arms slightly, and, as the long-winged bird flew past, his outstretched fingers became as slender as hooks. He grabbed at the air, and with a flick of his arm, he scooped up a bag full of 1,000 grain gold that was held by a Yinjiao warrior. The place where the Yinjiao warrior had grabbed the bag was cut open, leaving only a piece of animal skin in his hand. The bag was taken away. After the attack, the person pulled up. The Yinjiao warrior didn't have time to do anything else. He could only watch as the person left. Some 1,000 grain gold still fell from the opening of the animal skin bag that wasn't tied tightly. The same thing happened in another part of the 1,000 grain gold field. Someone suddenly came in and took away a bag of 1,000 grain gold. The bag was full and tied up, but they didn't have time to move it to the warehouse. Now, it was taken away by a sneak attack. The two of them smirked proudly. If it weren't for the Flaming Horn's tight security, they would have been able to steal even more. However, they probably wouldn't have another chance after this, so they had no choice but to retreat. "Let's go. Coo!" There was a bird call in the air, and the intruders all retreated. As they left, they let out strange cries, like the cry of a victor after a battle. All of this happened in the span of a few breaths. Ao's expression changed when he saw this. His expression was ferocious, even ruthless. It was obvious that these people worked very well together. They made full use of each other's strengths and weaknesses, using each other's strengths to make up for their weaknesses. If they weren't still in the Flaming Horn's territory and needed to continue working together, they would have immediately flown in different directions. And once they left Yinjiao territory, even if Xiao Xian called Cha-Cha back to continue chasing, they wouldn't be able to catch up. After all, there were 7 of them, 7 birds. Ao was about to give chase, but Xiao Xian stopped him. "You stay here, I'll go." Between Ao and Xiao Xian, one of them had to stay behind. After all, the harvest wasn't over yet, and there might be other variables. Someone had to stay here to watch over things. After hearing Xiao Xian's words, Ao reluctantly stopped. After all, it was useless for him to chase after them. Xiao Xian could still get Cha-Cha to help. After saying that, Xiao Xian flew in the direction of the figures in the sky. He looked at the 2 bags of fruit in his hands, his face full of pride. "Yinjiao, that's all there is to it. Exciting. Huh. Did you see the faces of those Yinjiao people? I didn't see it, but it definitely won't be good. Ha ha ha. My arm was almost crippled, but it's good that we got it. I didn't see those Yinjiao people's faces, but I'm sure they'll look like they've been smashed with bird poop. Hey, don't be so happy yet. There's someone chasing after us." Someone beside Wu, he interrupted the laughter of the others. We looked down. There weren't many trees here, and he could see the person running through the trees. Seeing that the person was running so fast, and the distance between them was quickly closing, Wu He's eyes flashed with surprise. However, he didn't stop smiling. Instead, he said with some interest, "That's Yinjiao's great elder." "What, that's the kid? Isn't Yinjiao's great elder an old man?" Someone didn't understand. Most of the elders they had seen before were middle-aged and elderly. "Don't worry about him. That kid can't fly." We didn't care. Chapter 691. After Xiao Xian chased after those people, the atmosphere in the field became heavy. They were too careless. If they had been more cautious, perhaps none of this would have happened. At least, those people wouldn't have been able to escape so easily. Ao was filled with regret now. Even though Xiao Xian had warned them that there were others watching them and they had been on guard, after the bat leader showed its might, they thought that no one would dare to come close. Who knew that those people would be so bold? They were crazy. Weren't they afraid of being targeted by the bat leader? Wasn't the explosion of those birds a lesson? But it had already happened, and it had happened in an extremely humiliating way. 2 bags of 1,000 grain gold had been stolen in front of everyone. It was like a slap to the Yinjiao people's faces, a vicious slap. The Yinjiao people present were stunned. Although the 2 bags of 1,000 grain gold were not even 1/10 of the total harvest, this was a different matter. It was a failure for the hunters to have their prey stolen, let alone the 1,000 grain gold that they had been taking care of for so long. Perhaps the trading point, the king beasts, the flaming river bridge, and other things had made the Yinjiao people arrogant. They were no longer as vigilant and cautious as they should have been. This was a big mistake. Even Ao himself had to admit that he had been in a bad mood recently, especially when he hadn't thrown the spear decisively. If he had cooperated with Xiao Xian and thrown the spear, even if they still couldn't change the outcome of the stolen grains, at least 1 or 2 people would have been left behind. He looked up at the sky again. The bat leader was killing even more savagely. It probably knew what was happening below, but it didn't chase after them. If it did, it would have to give up on this more important place. It could only guard here. It wasn't a tamed beast, so it wouldn't be as obedient as a cha-cha. Its goal was different from the Yinjiao people. It would be angry if something was stolen from under its nose, but it wouldn't chase after those who stole the grains. It knew how to weigh the pros and cons. It would only guard the more important place. Relying too much on external forces was not good. Ao sighed inwardly. The timing of those people's appearance was too good. If they had been a moment earlier or a moment later, they might have failed. Perhaps they had also considered the attitude of the bat leader and the craziness of those people. He had thought that only a bandit was capable of such a feat, but who would have thought that there were others as well? The robbers liked to appear at night, but these people were at noon, under the scorching sun, under the watchful eyes of everyone. Ao felt that compared to the theft, this slap was even more painful. Of course, now was not the time to blame himself. There was no time to reflect. Keep your spirits up, all of you. It's not over yet. Ao roared. So what if he was unwilling? It was better to settle the matter at hand first. This time, he would treat it as a lesson. Ao didn't think that Xiao Xian would be able to stop all of them. Looking at their actions and cooperation, he knew that they were all veterans. Cha-Cha alone wouldn't be able to stop all of them. At the side of the flaming river bridge, Ta turned to look at the sky. 7 figures flew past the forest not far away. They probably knew that there were people guarding this area, so they didn't approach. Instead, they continued to fly upstream. Although they were a little far away, with Ta's eyesight, he could still roughly see them. He looked at the familiar animal skin bag, then at the plants that fell from time to time. He couldn't hold back his anger anymore. Someone actually stole the 1,000 grain gold. Ta also noticed Xiao Xian's tracks. Xiao Xian was chasing after those people. He moved his feet. He wanted to chase after them personally, but when he saw the people on the other side, he paused. He raised his hand and pointed at the people beside him. You guys follow them and see. The 4 tribesmen on the other side of the flaming river couldn't see what was going on because they were further away. They were still discussing what was going on, but soon they saw it. On the other side of the river, where the Yinjiao headquarters were, there were people riding birds in the sky. It looked like they were planning to cross the river. The people behind the crowd saw this and understood. Weren't those the Chonglis? From the looks of it, did they succeed? To be able to steal from Yinjiao's headquarters, the Chonglis were indeed powerful. If that was the case, Yinjiao could only admit defeat. In the sky, after Wu He's group of 7 snatched the 2 big bags of grains, 2 of the long-winged birds were severely injured and their flight was affected. They were also carrying arrows. The other 2 long-winged birds carrying the animal skin bags couldn't fly high because of the heavy load. Flying high took a lot of energy. Wu He's group also had a severely injured person. The long-winged birds were even more tired because they were carrying 2 people at the same time. Although the snatching was short, it took a lot of energy, especially the 7 long-winged birds. They were under a lot of pressure. Even if the giant bat wasn't a king beast, it was more of a threat to them than the king stoneworm because bats could fly. They had finally completed the mission under a lot of pressure. Now that they relaxed, they felt very tired. To conserve energy and for the 7 of them to work together better, the 7 birds didn't fly too high. Of course, that was only compared to their usual height. Even if they weren't high, it wasn't a height that the beasts on the ground could reach. They flew above the forest and maintained a certain distance from the canopy. This allowed them to conserve energy and avoid the threats on the trees. This was the height that many experienced birds liked. Cha-Cha also maintained this distance in the past. As long as they flew fast enough, the people on the ground wouldn't be able to hit them unless they were sharpshooters. They chose to fly upstream because there weren't many people on the flaming river. They definitely wouldn't fly upstream because they didn't want to enter the forest full of fearsome beasts. They had to cross the river. On the other side of the flaming river, the tribes weren't evenly distributed. This was what Wu He found out. He also knew that the Yinjiao people had gone downstream before. There must be more Yinjiao people downstream who were familiar with Yinjiao. If they flew there, they would be watched. But upstream was different. As long as they crossed the river, there would be fewer tribes upstream and fewer people watching them. That way, they could escape faster. We're already out of Yinjiao territory. If we continue forward, we'll be in the forest full of fearsome beasts. Let's cross the river. Wu He said. The others didn't object. They signaled for the long-winged birds to change direction and prepare to cross the river. Once we cross the river, we'll split up, Wu He said. Suddenly, his eyelids twitched. What's wrong? The others saw this and looked around nervously. They didn't see any suspicious flying objects in the sky. They didn't see the giant bat because they didn't see the giant mountain eagle that they were supposed to meet either. But that kid was still following them closely. Anything out of the ordinary? Wu He asked. Other than that kid still following us, we don't see any other threats. The others looked around again and said with certainty, That's good. Wu He felt that he was probably overthinking things because he was too nervous. He didn't underestimate Xiao Xian. As the grand elder of the Yinjiao tribe, someone who could lure the king beast away, he must be special. However, the main reason why Wu He didn't think much of him was because Xiao Xian couldn't fly. Even the king beast that was causing a ruckus outside, the flaming river trading point, couldn't do anything to them in the air. Without the giant mountain eagle's help, what could the grand elder of Yinjiao do at a time like this? Not even a fart. Wu He poked his head out and looked at the people below who hadn't given up yet. He then looked at the flaming river that was getting closer and closer. The smile on his face grew wider and wider. They were already here, and that guy didn't have an eagle to help him. There was no bridge here either. How was he going to cross the river? There were many big, vicious fish in the river. Let's see how you're going to catch up. The river was getting closer and closer. The 7 long-winged birds were no longer paying attention to the people below. Among the 7 of them, only Wu He was still staring at the people below. Just as the 7 long-winged birds were about to fly into the river, the people in the forest jumped out and jumped high into the air. Seeing this, Wu He couldn't help but laugh. You think you can fly just because you jump high? Do you think you can fly? But soon, Wu He couldn't laugh anymore. Whoosh! There was a sound like a strong gust of wind. A blazing flame rose from Xiao Xian's body. A strong gust of wind swept up from below. The wind fanned the fire, and it soared into the sky. In the blink of an eye, the flames gathered together and formed a giant that suddenly stood up in the air. A strong sense of oppression seeped out and filled the air. The rapidly rotating gust of wind made the figure formed by the flames blurry. The flames that floated out of the giant's body didn't make it look strange. Instead, it made it look even more intimidating, like the mane of an angry beast. The 7 Chong Lis who were closest felt it the most. They had never felt such pressure before. Such a majestic aura seemed to be able to crush people. The flame giant was almost at the same level as them. They couldn't see its eyes, only its silhouette. But Wu He and the others had an illusion that the giant's eyes were staring at them, where he could only feel the bones in his body creaking. The other 6 people's faces also changed. Fear, panic, helplessness. Their fingers were trembling, and they felt like they were about to suffocate. The 7 long-winged birds even forgot to flap their wings. Everything was out of their control. There was an unexpected obstacle. And just at the instant when they were stunned, the flame giant moved. It raised its palm and pressed down, as if it was swatting away flies, slapping over. The blazing gust of wind carried an irresistible force. It didn't give Wu He and the others any time to react. They could only watch as the giant palm slapped down. The people who were watching from the other side of the bridge gasped when they saw this scene. Their mouths were agape, and their eyes were wide open. Their jaws were about to fall off. What the hell was that? They only saw a giant made of flames suddenly appear, and then, with a palm, those people in the air were slapped down. Just like that, it slapped them down. Chapter 692. With that slap, 5 of the 7 long-winged birds in the air fell to the ground. The other 2 weren't hit directly, but were swept away by the force of the slap. They spun a few times in the air and barely managed to steady themselves before crashing into a tree. These 2 birds were lucky, but the other 5 weren't so lucky. Although it was just flames, the force of the slap was real. When a flame giant's palm slapped towards them, it directly passed through their bodies. However, the force of the slap still carried a scorching air current, as if it wanted to burn them up, causing them to feel a burning pain. That was not a real flame. It was a fire seed flame that was activated by totemic power. It was similar to how some people would have flames on their skin when they activated their totemic power. Everyone could understand this, but the difference was that no one had ever created such a huge giant like Xiao Xian. This was not something they could understand. Perhaps only those who had participated in the Flaming River Banquet would not be surprised by this. Many tribesmen were fearful of unfamiliar and seemingly powerful forces. The scene in front of them left them stunned for a long time. It wasn't until the flames on the other side gradually disappeared that they trembled as if they were frightened. The Yinjiao, tribesmen guarding the bridgehead, looked away. Others might not know what that was, but they knew very well. They couldn't help but sigh with pride, as expected of the head elder. Thinking of the trouble ahead, the Yinjiao tribesmen guarding the bridgehead immediately became serious. They looked at the foreign tribesmen who were causing a ruckus. The head elder's actions just now gave them confidence. They didn't need to think too much. They just needed to do what they were supposed to do. If they couldn't stop these people, the head elder and the others would naturally deal with them. Seeing the Yinjiao tribesmen guarding the bridgehead looking at them, the one who caused the ruckus earlier changed his expression and forced out a laugh. Haha. He then turned and left. What a joke. They didn't want to go over and get slapped. They didn't want to rush over and meet the same fate as those who had been slapped. What if that flame giant had targeted them? Seeing that the situation wasn't right, they gave up on the idea of rushing in. Although the Yinjiao tribesmen were different from the rumors, they were still quite fearsome. For the time being, they didn't want to directly confront Yinjiao. As for the probing they wanted to do before, whoever wanted to test him could go ahead. In any case, they did not intend to continue. Let's go to the Flaming River trading point and see if there's anything good there. Don't go back empty-handed. But boss, aren't we going to take a walk on the Flaming River Bridge? Someone asked. When a Yinjiao issue is resolved, there should be a chance. The Flaming River Bridge was secondary now. The most important thing was that their evaluation of Yinjiao had increased by another level. They knew what kind of attitude they should have towards different tribes. Since the troublemakers had left, the others were also scared and naturally wouldn't continue to stay here. The people at the back of the crowd glanced at the direction where the flame giant had appeared before they left. Since the Changle people had been beaten down, the Yinjiao people definitely wouldn't let them leave. They might even kill them and rob the Yinjiao people of their belongings. The Yinjiao people definitely wouldn't let them live. Fortunately, he didn't act rashly. The few of them looked at each other and saw the relief in each other's eyes. Forget it. It was better to observe for a while longer. They wouldn't go to the Yinjiao headquarters. They didn't want to follow in the footsteps of the Changle people. On the other side, Xiao Xian walked towards the 5 people who had been slapped down. 2 people had left in the sky. He didn't chase after them, nor did he use the bow and ornament to summon the flame giant to stop them. The 5 Changle people and the 5 long-winged birds all felt terrible after being slapped down from the sky, especially those who were already injured. Even though the one who was heavily injured was cushioned by the long-winged bird, he still fainted from the fall. The branches that had been broken by them struggled for a while before finally falling down. One of the Changle people who was groaning in pain was suffocating. His face was red and he seemed to want to cough, but he couldn't. He could only breathe with all his might. The muscles on his face were contorted from the pain. Well, he helped his companions who could still stand up. He looked at the approaching Xiao Xian cautiously. His gaze lingered on the green broadsword in Xiao Xian's hand for a while. The broadsword had a strong, murderous aura. Even if it wasn't used to kill people, it must have slaughtered many ferocious beasts. Now, Xiao Xian's broadsword was pointed at them. Some of the people who had been slapped down had their legs broken. Some had even fainted. It was impossible for all of them to leave safely. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Someone was quickly approaching from the forest. First Elder. The people sent by Ta to help had also arrived. Looking at the 5 strangers, a fierce light flashed in their eyes. They walked towards them with murderous intent. However, they didn't attack immediately. Instead, they looked at Xiao Xian and waited for Xiao Xian to speak. "Tie them up," Xiao Xian said. The people who had already drawn their axes and were thinking about how to chop them up were stunned when they heard Xiao Xian's words. They didn't understand what Xiao Xian meant, so they asked, "Chop them up first, then tie them up?" "No, keep them alive." Hearing Xiao Xian's words, Wu He and the others breathed a sigh of relief. They had already been injured when they were fighting for Yin Jiao's grains. The slap and fall just now had added to their injuries. Even Wu He, who was slightly injured, couldn't perform at half of his usual level, let alone those who were seriously injured. However, the Yin Jiao people were different, not to mention Xiao Xian, who had slapped them down, had other tricks up his sleeve. Even the Yin Jiao warriors who came later would have a hard time defending themselves. This was Yin Jiao territory. Wu He and the others had planned to fight to the death, but when they heard Xiao Xian say to keep them alive, they were overjoyed. They didn't want to fight recklessly anymore. As long as they could survive, the 2 who left would definitely call for reinforcements. Why? The Yin Jiao warriors who came over didn't understand why the First Elder wanted to keep these people alive. In the past, they would just kill them directly. They deserved to die, just like those who robbed them. Not to mention, these people stole the 1,000-grain gold that was highly valued by the tribe. It was even more unforgivable. They should be killed and used as fertilizer. If it was anyone else who said this, they would have already complained. However, it was Xiao Xian who said this. Even if they had different opinions, they would still follow Xiao Xian's orders. They didn't have any grievances. They believed that the First Elder had his reasons for doing this. Knowing that Xiao Xian didn't want to kill them, Wu He and the others gave up resisting. They were worried that fighting would make the Yin Jiao angry and change their minds. If they fell this time, then so be it. The most important thing was to stay alive. Only then would they have a chance to escape. Ta quickly came over with his men. He was still worried about this place. When he saw that the people who gathered on the other side of the bridge had already left, he only left a portion of his men behind and brought the rest to chase after them. Ta also didn't understand why Xiao Xian wanted to keep them alive. This wasn't Xiao Xian's style. He had never done this when he encountered robbers in the past. However, this wasn't the time to ask. He ordered his men to tie up the 5 annoying strangers with straw ropes. They even tied up the unconscious man and the 5 long-winged birds and brought them back. Most of the scattered 1,000-grain gold was picked up. A small portion was eaten by the birds and other animals in the forest. This made Ta even angrier. He wanted nothing more than to break the 5 men's necks. By the time Xiao Xian returned, the matter at the farmland had already been resolved. Seeing that Xiao Xian had recovered most of the lost grains and even captured the 5 robbers, Ao Yinjiao's mood was much better. However, he still couldn't figure out why Xiao Xian wanted to keep the 5 men alive. He was the one who wanted to kill them. When he heard that 2 of them had escaped, Ao began to worry again. He planned to go back and discuss a defensive strategy. Those people cooperated too well, and the timing was too good. Moreover, they were from the other side of the sea. They must have other accomplices. He had to be careful. Keeping them alive is still useful. Someone will come and ransom them, Xiao Xian said. What can they use to ransom them? Ao asked casually. Money? Yin Jiao didn't lack that. Food? They didn't lack that either. Metal? Unless they brought over nuclear seeds, they wouldn't be interested in ordinary metal wares. Yin Jiao's new bronze wares were better than most of the metal wares on the other side of the sea. Then what other deal could tempt Yin Jiao? Ao couldn't figure it out. If it was just some money, he might as well kill these people to vent his anger. That would make him happy. I need them to do something, Xiao Xian said. Although Wu He was a bit far from them, he could tell what they were talking about from the movements of their mouths. Thus, he didn't need to hear. He could roughly guess what Xiao Xian and Ao were talking about just by looking. It wasn't complete, but he had a rough idea. Although he guessed that Xiao Xian had a use for them, or that he wanted to exchange them for something, he didn't expect that what they wanted wasn't money or anything else. That guy's goals seemed to be Changle, and not just the 5 of them. Wu Yi's heart skipped a beat when he thought about what had happened. Xiao Xian had slapped them down from the sky at the flaming river on purpose. He was using them to establish his authority. With Xiao Xian's speed, he could have slapped them down from the sky at any time, but he'd waited until they were near the river. At that time, there were many eyes on the other side of the river. They'd wanted more people to see how they were going to steal from Yinjiao territory. They hadn't expected things to turn out like this. They believed that those who saw that scene would temporarily restrain their restless thoughts. However, Wu Yi couldn't guess what Xiao Xian wanted the Changle people to do. Lock them up first. Xiao Xian pointed at Wu He and the others. Don't tie them up with straw ropes. Use chains. Straw ropes will make it easy for them to escape. Those who'd been thinking of ways to get rid of the straw ropes could only give up. The Yinjiao people had actually made these sturdy chains. After Wu He and the others were taken away, the farming stopped for the time being. Several Yinjiao executives gathered for a discussion. We had already told them where they came from. Zheng Luo and the others had also heard of the Changle people. What else can the Changle people do besides cause trouble? Zheng Luo looked at Xiao Xian. Let them bring a letter to the other side of the sea. After all, we still have too few people. Zheng Luo didn't understand at first, but he quickly understood. His eyes lit up, and he clenched his fist and pounded the stone table beside him. That's right. We really don't have enough people. Chapter 693. Zheng Luo and Xiao Xian were speaking in riddles. Ao and the rest couldn't understand them at all. However, Duo Kong seemed to have thought of something after Zheng Luo's words, and his face lit up. You're saying that we should let the Chonglis send a message to the Taiha tribe? Should we persuade them to come over? Everyone understood after hearing Duo Kang's words. Even though Ao and the rest had never met the Taiha tribe before, they had heard of them. Their brothers from the other side of the sea had a lot to say about the Taiha tribe. What impressed Ao the most was that the Taiha people were good neighbors. Xiao Xian said that there were too few people. Everyone understood that as the popularity of the Flaming River trading point increased, the Yinjiao tribes were starting to feel powerless. The reason was that there weren't enough people and they didn't have enough manpower. They didn't have enough reliable helpers. Once the number of traveling parties increased, it would be a fierce battle. Fortunately, because of the King Beast and Xiao Xian's use of the Chonglis to establish their authority, the people who were harboring all kinds of thoughts stopped for a moment. However, this wasn't a long-term solution. They couldn't let children who had just learned to walk become warriors who could hunt and fight within a year. Increasing the population wasn't something that could be done in a short period of time. As for reliable helpers, out of all the tribes that Yinjiao had contact with along the river, only the drumming tribe could be considered reliable. Even the rain tribe couldn't be considered as reliable. However, the drumming tribe didn't have many people. No matter how they thought about it, they were still lacking a lot of people. Now that Xiao Xian suggested this, everyone in the room was tempted. Even though the Taiha people aren't very likable at times, they're still trustworthy. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been neighbors with them for so many years. Plus, it was our ancestors who chose them in the first place, said Zheng Luo. They used to quarrel with the people of Taiha River, but those were just small fights. When there was a big problem, they would still work together, just like the salt mine incident. The salt mines had been abandoned because of the appearance of the salt beasts. With the salt beasts there, no one dared to dig in the salt mines. And without Yinjiao, the Taiha people's lives would be much more difficult. Back then, it was because of the Yinjiao that the two tribes joined forces. It was enough to make the other tribes in the forest not dare to make a move against them. But if it was only the Taiha tribe, it would not be much of a deterrent. It is indeed a good idea. But what if they are not willing to come? Ao asked. Explain the situation here clearly. They should be willing. Of course, it's still up to them to decide. Zheng Luo felt that the possibility of the Taihe people coming over was very high. The Taihe tribe had moved their nest a few times before. They did not have deep feelings for that piece of land. In terms of tribal interests, moving here was also beneficial for the Taihe tribe. After the disaster, Zheng Luo knew that the two continents were close. He wanted to go over and see the Taihe people and persuade them to move here. They could still be neighbors, but he knew that the slave masters on the other side of the sea were very vigilant against Yinjiao. The situation in the desert near the sea was very strange, so he could only give up. With the establishment of the Flaming River trading point, everyone was very busy and did not have time to travel. Now that Xiao Xian mentioned it, Zheng Luo saw an opportunity. The Chonglu people were the best people to send a letter. The people on the other side of the sea would definitely keep an eye on the Yinjiao people. If Yinjiao people went over, they would definitely capture them immediately. But what if it was the Chonglu people who went over? People on the other side of the sea would probably want to stay as far away as possible from this kind of annoying character. But what if the Chonglu people don't want to? Also, how can we guarantee that the Chonglu people won't do anything else? This organization, with a bad reputation, was indeed worrisome. Although the Chonglu people are as annoying as the robbers, they are different in that they value teamwork. Xiao Xian said, "The robbers work alone most of the time, but the Chonglu people are different. They work very well together." Also, when they appeared in the field, they were willing to expose themselves in advance to catch their fallen comrade. It's clear that they care about their own people. Also, I photographed 5 people. One of them was seriously injured and unconscious. One of them couldn't move because of his injured legs. Of the other 3, one had a broken arm, and the other 2 only had minor injuries. They could have left immediately. I was the only one there, so the 3 of them had a high chance of escaping if they split up. But they didn't abandon their comrade, who couldn't escape. So I thought that no matter if they were dead or alive, the Chonglu people would definitely come back. If they were alive, they could still negotiate with the Chonglu people. After listening to Xiao Xian's explanation, the others nodded. That was right. Ao was initially wary of the Chonglu people, but now he hoped that they would come quickly. That way, Xiao Xian's plan could be carried out. Then, let's prepare the letter to the Taihe people, Xiao Xian said. The others understood that no matter how close they were to the Taihe people, they had to show their sincerity. If only Zheng Luo and Duo Kong left a message in the letter, the Taihe people might not fully believe it. After all, Zheng Luo was no longer the leader, and Duo Kong was only one of the 2 leaders. After the discussion, Ao stopped Xiao Xian. The bat has left, but it took a bag of grains with it. It wasn't the biggest one, but a small one. After harvesting the 1,000 grain gold, the people quickly removed the grains from the ears and put them in other bags. The bags used to store the 1,000 grain gold were all big bags, but Xiao Xian asked them to use smaller ones. When Ao went to check at night, he found that a small bag was missing. The bag was about the size of a human head. There was an open window in the warehouse, and there were many people guarding outside. The bat was probably the only one who could sneak in and take the 1,000 grain gold away. Also, I didn't see it tonight. Is it still nearby? Ao asked. Not anymore. Xiao Xian didn't sense the bat leader's presence. It might have taken the bag of grains back to the Bat Mountain. Could it be that it was just helping us? It didn't take a lot of grains, Ao sighed. Xiao Xian glanced at him. You're thinking too much. It just thinks that these things belong to it, and we're just its little brothers collecting food for it. Why is it protecting the 1,000 grain gold? It considers the 1,000 grain gold as one of its favorite foods, and it doesn't allow other people or animals to get close. It's a typical behavior of an animal protecting its food. As for why it only took a small bag, it's because it's easier to move around. The big bag can't fly, and it's quite far from here to the Bat Mountain. Will it come back for the rest of the 1,000 grain gold? Ao asked. I don't know. We can check every day. If we eat the 1,000 grain gold, will it get angry? Ao was still worried. He didn't even dare to eat what he grew. It was so frustrating. Probably not. If it doesn't allow us to touch the 1,000 grain gold, it will threaten us. Beasts protect their food. They'd rather let their food rot than let unrelated people or animals take it away. At least for now, the bat leader didn't exclude the Yin Jiao people as its own people. Then I'm relieved. After resolving his doubts, Ao finally relaxed. He began to prepare for the next step. He didn't know when the Chong Li's people would arrive. As for Wu He's group of 5 who were locked up in the cave, they were having a hard time. The soup was cold, the meat was cold and hard, and it tasted bad. There wasn't even any dry grass on the ground, let alone animal skins. Fortunately, it wasn't too cold yet, but the temperature at night was much lower than during the day. In a place like this, they couldn't eat or sleep well. They were indeed prisoners. But as long as they had food, it was fine. Wu He and the others didn't expect the Yin Jiao to treat them well. They were just waiting for someone to come and ransom them. Wu He looked at the Yin Jiao people not far away from him. They were the ones guarding them. Now, they were cooking the meat soup. The rich aroma was still hot, and it wafted through the cave. Wu He took a deep breath and felt even hungrier. He looked away from his soup pot and tried to shift his attention to something else. The Yin Jiao people were talking about something. Wu He couldn't hear them clearly, but he could guess what they were talking about from the movement of their lips. Hey, when the great elder summoned the flame giant, he smacked them down with one slap. Do you know how they looked when they were tied up? They looked like they had been smashed with bird shit. Ha ha ha, a Yin Jiao warrior said. Wu He, who had deciphered this, was speechless. Those words sounded familiar. As he continued to observe the Yin Jiao guards, Wu He realized that the Yin Jiao people had mentioned the word bandit. It seemed to be the name of a tribe. I feel like the Chong Lis are just like the bandits. They make people want to kill them. Actually, if the great elder hadn't spoken, we would have done it. But the bandits seem to be harder to catch. Up until now, we've only caught 1 bandit, but the Chong Lis caught 5. Another Yin Jiao warrior said to his companion. The content of his words made Wu He very unhappy. Bandit? What the hell was a bandit? How could they be compared to the Chong Lis? Why did the Yin Jiao people say that they were stronger than the Chong Lis? Was there someone here who could compete with the Chong Lis? Wu He tried every day to find out more about the bandits from the guards and waited for the Chong Lis to come and save them. On the 5th day after Wu He and the others were captured, the Chong Lis finally arrived. However, they weren't here in Yin Jiao, but at the Flaming River trading point. They wouldn't let the Chong Lis into Yin Jiao's headquarters. Xiao Xian took out the animal skin scroll filled with words from the mountain, rolled it up, put it in a bamboo tube, and closed it. This was the letter everyone had written over the past 5 days to their old neighbor, the Taihe tribe. Under the night sky, Xiao Xian walked towards the Flaming River trading point. At the same time, he brought Wu He, whose hands and feet were cuffed, with him. To prove that these people were still alive, he had to bring a living person. Among the 5 of them, Wu He seemed to be the core of the group. He was also in the best state of mind, so he was the most suitable person to bring along. When Wu He heard that someone had come to save them, he was very happy. Although their mission had failed and they had embarrassed the Chong Lis, when he thought about how they would soon be free from their prison, his listlessness from a few days ago was swept away and he eagerly went over. Chapter 694. When Xiao Xian arrived at the Flaming River Castle, the Flaming River trading point was already very quiet. Only a few houses were lit up by water moon stones and other illuminating crystals. When the guard outside the Flaming River Castle saw Xiao Xian, he gestured to let Xiao Xian know how many Chong Lis were inside, so that Xiao Xian could be mentally prepared. Xiao Xian nodded slightly and brought Wu He in. Outside the reception room, there were 2 people that Xiao Xian didn't know. They were probably from the Chong Lis. When they saw Wu He, they sneered and looked at him with disdain and mockery. Not only did he fail his mission, but he was also caught. This was indeed embarrassing for the Chong Lis. On the other hand, Wu He was even more nervous. He wasn't afraid of being mocked by the 2 people outside. He could always mock them back next time. Who was afraid of who? Everyone had been mocking each other for a long time. The Chong Lis also compared their performance. Wu He had always been better than the 2 people, so he didn't care about their mockery. What made him nervous was the people inside. Who would come this time? Xiao Xian knocked twice on the door and opened it. Other than Zheng Luo and Duo Kong, there were 5 strangers inside. They should be the Chong Lis who came after hearing the news. Before Xiao Xian arrived, Zheng Luo had already talked to them once. At this time, the room was very quiet. Zheng Luo and Duo Kong seemed to be thinking about something. The five people didn't seem like they were going to make a sound either. They were all waiting quietly. When Xiao Xian opened the door, everyone inside looked at the door. The five Chong Lis looked at Wu He at first. Then they looked at Xiao Xian and sized him up. Among the five people, the first person that Xiao Xian noticed was the only one who was sitting. The man didn't look strong and was dressed like a tribesman from the Flaming River region. There wasn't anything special about him. Behind him was a big, muscular man with a bronze hammer in his hand. He stood there like a wall, not bothering to hide his ferocious aura. If he was in a crowd, he would definitely be noticed. However, the most dangerous person was the only one who was sitting down. His body was thin, but he was like a saber hidden in a scabbard. When Xiao Xian entered, the man's closed eyes slowly opened. He casually turned his head to look at Xiao Xian, but the gaze in his eyes was as sharp as a blade, as if a sharp blade had been unsheathed. Xiao Xian became vigilant. This person's status in Changle was probably extremely high. Just as Xiao Xian was thinking this, Wu He, who had been brought in, let out a howl and rushed over to kneel in front of the man. "Boss, why are you here? Are you here to save us? When can we leave?" The man glanced at Wu He, then looked away expressionlessly as if he didn't see Wu He's howl. He said to Zheng Luo, "I've agreed to your request." "Where's the thing?" Xiao Xian looked at Zheng Luo. When he saw Zheng Luo nod, he took out the bamboo tube. "Don't worry, I said I won't look. I won't let anyone see it before it's delivered," said the man. After that, the man left with his men. He didn't like to talk too much. The more he spoke, the more he revealed. He didn't even look at Wu He as he left. The two Changle people guarding the door smiled at Wu He before they left. Their smiles were filled with schadenfreude. 7 long-winged birds took off from the Flaming River Castle and left the Flaming River trading point. They quickly disappeared into the night. "Boss, are we leaving just like that? Are we leaving Wu He and the others behind?" On the long-winged bird, one of the Changle people carefully looked at his boss's expression and asked. If they stayed in Yinjiao, Wu He and the others wouldn't be treated well. They didn't know how long they would have to wait for the letter to be delivered. They're howling so loudly. It's obvious they're fine. The others won't be in too much trouble either. Just treat this as a punishment for failing the mission. It was rare for them to cross the sea, but the moment they arrived, they received news that Wu He and the others were captured in front of so many people. How could they not be angry? As the leader of the Changle people, he felt humiliated. If Yin Jiao had killed Wu He and the others, he would have organized another round of revenge. However, Yin Jiao didn't kill them. Instead, they gave him a strange condition. Actually, delivering a letter wasn't difficult for them. It just took some time. When they thought about the destination of the letter, they couldn't help but suspect Yin Jiao's intentions. "Yin Jiao is very ambitious," sighed the man. "How is Yin Jiao ambitious? I don't see them declaring war on anyone." Another Changle was confused. Some things don't have to be declared war to achieve. After the Changle people left, Wu He, who was left behind in the Yin Jiao tribe, was taken back to the cave and continued to be locked up. "It's over. Did the boss give up on us?" asked one of the people in the cave sadly. "Definitely not. The boss made a deal with the Yin Jiao people. Once the deal is done, he'll definitely come back for us," said Wu He. It wasn't that he didn't understand. He just didn't want to be locked up here forever. Every day, he had to fight with the mosquitoes and insects in the cave. There were also those coarse grains. Yin Jiao had planted so many good things, but they only gave them this. Well, he had protested, but all he got was one sentence from the Yin Jiao people. A captive should act like a captive. How could he have a nerve to ask for conditions after being caught for stealing? Did bird shit get into his brain? I want to eat meat. Hot, freshly roasted, fearsome beast meat and soup. Wu He shouted to himself. He didn't expect the Yin Jiao people to treat them well. He was just shouting to vent his frustration. Footsteps sounded. Someone had entered the cave. Wu He and the others even heard the few Yin Jiao people guarding the cave call out, "Grand Elder." As the footsteps got closer, they could smell the thick aroma of barbecued meat. It was very fragrant. Just by smelling the aroma, They knew that the barbecued meat must have been seasoned well. It was not overcooked, nor was it cold and hard. It must be similar to the spiced barbecued meat they had in the Flaming River trading point. Because of this, they salivated even faster. He wiped away the saliva dripping from the corner of his mouth and looked at the newcomer. You want to eat fresh, hot, fearsome beast meat? That's not impossible. Xiao Xian came in with a large ceramic bowl. The lid of the bowl had been removed when he entered the cave. The wind blew into the cave, blowing the aroma of the roasted meat into the cave. We took 2 deep breaths. When he heard Xiao Xian's words, he scrambled to his feet. His eyes were glowing like a hungry wolf that hadn't eaten for a long time. What conditions? He wasn't stupid. The Yinjiao people would never give them what they wanted without conditions. Xiao Xian took out a small black piece and handed it to Wu He. How did you make this? We knew what Xiao Xian was holding with one glance. It was from the black shield they used to rob the Yinjiao grains. Xiao Xian only had a small piece in his hand. What were the Chonglis most afraid of? Temptation. Their curiosity was always weak in the face of temptation, whether it was food or something else. But at this moment, they didn't dare to say a word about the conditions to obtain this delicious food. This was the Chongli's secret. They wouldn't tell anyone, not even if they starved to death. Chapter 695. Xiao Xian knew that the black shield Wu He and the others were using was similar to rubber, but it was different. Rubber was not unfamiliar to the Yinjiao people. After living in the mountains for so many years, they had learned from their exploration of plants that the thick liquid of certain trees could be applied to clothes to make waterproof. They could also make waterproof shoes that wouldn't get wet on rainy days. However, the Yinjiao people felt that it was too troublesome and uncomfortable to wear. It affected their movements, so they rarely used it. After all, at that time, technology was lacking and materials were limited. Xiao Xian had wanted to try more, but he realized that the Yinjiao people weren't interested in it. They didn't use it much when hunting, so he put aside. However, when they were harvesting crops, Xiao Xian was very interested in the black shield used by the Chonglis to steal grains from the 1,000-grain gold fields. That wasn't normal rubber, so Xiao Xian didn't know the steps to make it. The rubber was lighter than the ones Xiao Xian used in the past, and it could block most arrows. Even the spear he threw couldn't completely penetrate the black shield, and part of the spear's handle was stuck in it. Wu He and the others showed an unusually firm attitude towards Xiao Xian's question. Although their eyes were glued to the bowl of meat, they didn't miss a single word. In order to block out the temptation, some of them even held their breath until their faces turned red. Xiao Xian looked at the 5 people seriously and said, "It's fine if you don't want to say it. Let's change the conditions." "Say it." Wu He glared at Xiao Xian. How could they answer such a difficult condition? If they changed the conditions, it might also be difficult for them to speak. Even so, he still had hope. As long as it didn't involve the secrets of the Chonglis, he could say anything, including the secrets of the slave masters. "You Chonglis have been to many places," Xiao Xian said as he observed the 5 people in the cage. The Chonglis were proud of the places they had been to. Even the slave masters might not have been to as many places as the Chonglis. Wu He and the other 4 couldn't help but look pleased. "Then draw a picture," Xiao Xian said. What do you mean? You want us to draw the places we know about?" Wu He dug his ears with his fingers, emphasizing each word carefully to make sure he didn't hear wrong. "We've been to so many places. How can we possibly draw all of them? You don't even know how to draw maps? Forget it then." Xiao Xian took the bowl of meat and turned to leave. "Wait." Wu He stretched out a hand from between the stone pillars. "Why are you in such a hurry? I didn't say I couldn't draw. Why didn't you just say that you only wanted a map?" Xiao Xian stood there without moving. "You can draw?" "Nonsense, of course I can." "Come back, that." Wu He pointed at the bowl in Xiao Xian's hand. "Put it down. Let's talk nicely." They would rather starve to death than tell anyone about the creation of the Black Shield. But if it was just a map, they could draw it. Other than the hideouts that the Chonglis didn't want people to know about, they were more than willing to draw the other places, especially the slave master cities. "After we draw it, can you let us eat meat? Every day?" What I want you to take, don't use those things that look like burnt wood. Use good grains too, like the ones you just harvested, those golden ones. Hey, don't go. Wait. Stop. Let's talk nicely. Seeing Xiao Xian walk out again, Wu He became anxious. The four people behind him wanted to beat him up. They were anxious at the side. They finally had a chance to improve their lives, but it was almost rejected by Wu He just like that. They weren't asking for as much as Wu He said. They only wanted a little improvement. At the very least, they should put some soft hay on the ground, right? The ground was uneven. The broken bones that had just healed almost broke again after lying on the ground for a nap. All right, tell me, where do you want to draw it? Once you're done, hurry up and get us some food. I'm starving. Wu He sat on the ground and urged. As soon as Wu He finished speaking, he was kicked to the side. The tall, skinny man looked at Xiao Xian with a smile. His face was full of flattery, as if he wasn't the one who had snatched the grains. He's been starving recently. Great elder, don't mind him. Come, let's continue. What do you want to draw? Where do you want to draw it? How detailed do you want it to be? The tall, skinny man's mouth was bubbling as he asked a series of questions. Draw a simple one first. Just a rough map of the continent over there, Xiao Xian said. Wu He and the others cursed in their hearts. Simple. Just as Wu He was about to say something, someone covered his mouth and dragged him to a corner furthest away from the prison door. Only the tall, skinny man was left there to talk to Xiao Xian. We will do our best. All right, I'll get someone to bring the drawing board over later. I'll also prepare the brushes for you. As for the treatment you mentioned, that will depend on your performance. Xiao Xian's last sentence was a warning. Don't let me find out that you're faking it. Otherwise, you'll be tortured. All right, don't worry. The tall, skinny man rubbed his hands and glanced at the bowl of meat. Xiao Xian handed the bowl over. The tall, skinny man hugged the bowl gratefully, afraid that Xiao Xian would go back on his word. Even Wu He, who was full of resentment, stopped talking and went over to snatch the bowl. The Chonglis liked to enjoy themselves. They never mistreated themselves. Even when they came to this foreign continent, they always had the mentality of having fun. They liked to eat whatever was good to eat, play wherever they could, and find some excitement when they were bored. They didn't care about anything else. To put it bluntly, their mentality was, as long as you let me eat, drink, and play, whatever you want as long as I could give it to you, I won't refuse. To the other Chonglis, Wu He and the others would live a miserable life as captives if they stayed in Yanjiao. Since Yanjiao promised not to kill them, they would definitely keep them alive. After all, the deal was still in progress. But that was it. Dirty living quarters, coarse and rotten grains, and being locked up in a palm-sized place every day were normal. Perhaps others wouldn't mind, but to the Chonglis, it was torture. Life was meant to be enjoyed, not tortured. They would go crazy if they couldn't enjoy life and freedom. That was why the Chonglis who left the Flaming River Castle all felt that letting Wu He and the other four stay in the Flaming Horn tribe was the best punishment for the five of them. But those people didn't know that the five people who were supposed to be in a worse situation were actually drawing maps for better treatment. Not long after Xiao Xian left the cave, someone carried a stone slab that was almost as tall as a person into the cave. Wu He and the others looked at the polished stone slab in front of them. The flesh on their faces trembled. This drawing board is too big. The Chonglis wouldn't reveal the secret of the Black Shield. Xiao Xian was prepared for this. His main goal wasn't the secret of the Black Shield, but the map of the other side of the sea. Even if it wasn't complete, at least he could get a rough idea of it from the Chonglis. It would be more convenient for him in the future. The other side of the sea wasn't like here. There were many people on the other side of the sea. Caravans, adventurers, tribes that migrated from time to time, and so on. All these factors would reduce the number of unknown areas on the other side of the sea. On the other hand, because of the primitive fire seed, the tribesmen rarely migrated and never spread out too far. Even the expedition teams would travel back and forth between a few fixed places all year round, instead of exploring unknown areas. Now that the few tribes in the central region had started to move, perhaps in the future, this side would develop into the same state as the other side of the sea. But that wasn't something that could be achieved in 1 or 2 years. The Chonglis could provide them with a shortcut that would allow them to understand more about the other side of the sea. Xiao Xian would check on Wu He and the others' progress every day. If he was satisfied, he would get someone to change their straw mats. The food was also slightly better, but it was still far from what the Chonglis wanted. Hence, Wu He and the others worked even harder. They believed that if they continued, the straw mats in the cave would be replaced with animal hides, and the food would become more delicious. Life would still be beautiful, and they could still enjoy being prisoners in a cell. Other than checking on Wu He and the others' progress, Xiao Xian spent the rest of his time in the secret underground room of the Flaming River Castle, continuing to study the mummified monster. On the other side of the sea, in the dense forest, it was harvest season again. The Taiha tribesmen harvested all the herbs they needed to harvest and dried those that needed to be dried under the sun. After the follow-up processing, the expedition team set off again. Every time the expedition team set off, they had the habit of resting for a while at a fork in the road. Although they knew there wouldn't be another team carrying large bags of animal hides, they would still take a look in that direction. This wasn't requested by the team leader, but something that everyone in the expedition team would do. Both teams had decades of chemistry, so it wasn't easy to change it even if they wanted to. After Yin Jiao left, they took over Yin Jiao's land, but no one moved there to live. First of all, the Taiha tribe didn't have a large population. They could guard their own territory, but it wasn't reliable to split into two groups. Also, Yin Jiao's land wasn't good enough. It could grow normal crops, but it couldn't grow herbs. Even if they could, the quality of the herbs wouldn't be good enough. After all, the Taiha tribe had improved their land for generations. After Yin Jiao left, the flock of ducks also left. The situation in the forest changed again. Some tribes left, and some came in. There had been more than a dozen battles. It was relatively safe, suitable for living, and not too far from the city, so there were limited resources. In the past, when Yin Jiao was still here, Yin Jiao and the Taiha tribe worked together. Very few people dared to offend them openly, but after Yin Jiao left, the other tribes in the forest treated the Taiha tribe differently. The Taiha tribe wanted to find another tribe to work with, but they couldn't find one as trustworthy as Yin Jiao. Even a Mountain Wind tribe, whom they had worked with before, couldn't find one. Not long ago, the two tribes had a conflict and parted on bad terms. Usually, I didn't quarrel, and the leader of the Taiha tribe's hunting team had a bad temper. Other than necessary trade trips, they didn't interact with other tribes. The shaman said that this was probably loneliness. Chapter 696. After the expedition team left, in the Taiha tribe, the chief and shaman discussed their next plan. In the past few days, they discovered more tribesmen entering the forest. The Taiha chief wouldn't be so worried if it was just the migrating tribes of the past. This time, it wasn't just one tribe that entered the forest. It was people from many different tribes. They seemed to be looking for something. When the trading team returns, we should be able to bring back some news, said the Taiha shaman. This was not a good sign. Ever since the disaster, the slave masters have been behaving strangely, as if they were preparing for something big. If it had nothing to do with them, then so be it. But the changes in the forest clearly had a lot to do with the slave masters. Tribes like them who lived far away in the forest didn't have much information. They could only speculate based on the changes in the forest. I wonder what's going to happen. The Taiha chief was worried too. Their situation wasn't good either. They were probably used to working with Yin Jiao. Now they felt a lot of pressure. They could feel the greedy eyes in the forest. If it weren't for the fact that they still had some ability, a third of the herbs they collected over the past 6 months would have been stolen. This was why the expedition team was in a hurry to bring them out to trade after this harvest. They didn't feel safe leaving them here. It was better to trade for more. If only Yin Jiao was still here. The Taiha chief sighed. He and Zheng Luo had worked together for decades. If they counted back from their ancestors, it had been hundreds of years. The Taiha shaman could only sigh helplessly. No matter how much pressure there was, they had to bear it. They couldn't always count on others. The Taiha people were not cowards. For the next few days, the Taiha chief and shaman discussed countermeasures. The more news they received about the people entering the forest, the more uneasy they felt. In less than 10 days, the number of people entering the forest doubled. Most of them were strangers. What surprised the Taiha chief the most was that they even found people from the Black Bears. They weren't familiar with them, but they recognized the leader. It was Mauda, whom they'd interacted with before. However, the relationship between the Taiha tribe and the Black Bears was not as close as the relationship between Yinjiao and the Black Bears. Caravans always prioritize profits. What Yinjiao could give to the Black Bears, Taiha might not be able to. As the leader of a tribe, the Taiha chief tossed and turned in bed every day. He always felt that something big was going to happen. Sometimes, he would spend the whole night thinking about the information he had gathered, but he still couldn't come to a conclusion. Just as the Taiha leader was getting more and more anxious, the patrolling guards hurriedly ran to him. "Leader, someone's here." Hearing this, the Taiha leader's first reaction was, "Finally." He thought they were newcomers to the forest, so he asked, "Which tribe are they from?" The patrolling soldier who came over had a strange look on his face. He said hesitantly, he was from Tranquil. "Who?" The Taiha leader thought he heard wrong. He had thought of many people, but he never thought of this name. "Chong." "Chong Lee's," the soldier repeated. "Tell him to come over." "Forget it, I'll go out." The Taiha leader didn't want to lead the Tranquil people to the central area of the tribe. The Tranquil people didn't have a good reputation. If they didn't come here themselves, no one in the Taiha tribe would want to interact with them. The Tranquil person who came over was a young man. He was the only one. There were no other Tranquil people, but the Taiha leader didn't dare to be careless. From what he knew, the Tranquil people rarely moved alone, although there was only one person in front of him, who knew how many others were hiding in the dark. After the young man from Tranquil arrived at the Taiha tribe, he had been observing the tribe. Although the Taiha people grew more herbs, he didn't see many things that interested him. He scanned the area with his picky eyes. When he started to get impatient, he saw the Taiha people coming over. "You're the Taiha leader?" The young man looked at the leader. "Yes, I am." The Taiha leader frowned. He didn't understand why the Tranquil people were here. Just as he was about to ask, the young man threw a bamboo tube at him. A person with a bad reputation who needed to be on high alert suddenly threw something over. Normal people would avoid it immediately. The Taiha leader was the same. However, a moment of hesitation made him stop in his tracks. He raised his hand and caught the bamboo tube. Seeing the Taiha people's vigilance, the young man curled his lips. He seemed to be disdainful of the Taiha people's reaction. After a while, he said, "It's a letter from your old friend. Hurry up and read it. I don't want to wait." "Old friend?" The Taiha leader was confused. There were only a few people who could be called an old friend. However, when he saw the flame totem on the seal of the bamboo tube, his eyelids twitched. He said to the patrolling soldiers beside him, "Take this young man to rest." The patrolling soldiers didn't know how to react to their leader's sudden order. However, the Taiha leader had already run away with the bamboo tube. He looked very anxious. After learning that Yinjiao had sent a letter, the Taiha shaman couldn't sit still anymore. He went over to the Taiha leader. "Is Yinjiao planning to come back? Also, why would Yinjiao send a letter from the Tranquil people?" "I don't know. Let's take a look first." The bamboo tube was sealed with resin. If the tube was opened, the resin would definitely crack. However, since it was sealed so well, the Tranquil people shouldn't have peeked inside. He hurriedly opened the tube and carefully took out the animal skin scroll. After reading what was written on it, the Taiha leader was stunned for a long time. They didn't expect Yinjiao to develop so well. However, that wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing in the animal skin scroll was whether the Taiha tribe had any plans to migrate. If it was summed up in one sentence, "We've already prepared the land for you. We've also given you suggestions for your future plans. Come show off." This was still very attractive to the Taiha tribe at the moment. Migrate? It wasn't impossible. However, how would they migrate? How dangerous would the process be? How many difficulties would they encounter? They had to think about this carefully. This part of the forest was no longer safe. As time passed, more and more people would enter the forest. The Taiha leader and shaman thought about it for 3 days. During these 3 days, the traveling team came back earlier than expected and brought back a piece of news. The slave masters were indeed making a big move. Although they still didn't know what they wanted to do, from the royal city to other big and small cities, there were bounty posters. There were animals and plants on the posters. If anyone found them, the 6 noble families of the royal city would reward them handsomely. Those animals and plants were rarely seen in ordinary places, and some of them had never even been heard of. However, the conditions given by the slave owners made everyone envious. Why were there more and more people entering this forest? It was because most of those things were in the forest. Also, I heard that the slave masters might send people into the forest in the future. What should we do in the future? The leader of the traveling team was worried. If that was really the case, they wouldn't be able to live in peace. They might even encounter those people when hunting. Fighting was unavoidable. They had to be mentally prepared. They weren't interested in the bounties offered by the slave masters. They just wanted to live a peaceful life here. After hearing this news, the Taiha leader and shaman looked at each other. Their decision shifted again. The things Yin Jiao wrote on the animal skin scroll were too tempting. They also showed their absolute sincerity. Instead of being troubled here, unable to hunt freely, and having to deal with unnecessary disputes, they might as well take a gamble. However, migrating the tribe was not a small matter. They had to reply first. After thinking carefully, the Taiha leader wrote a reply. He expressed his interest in Yin Jiao's proposal. At the same time, he listed out the situation here and the difficulties they had to solve in order to migrate. After the Changle people left with the letter, the Taiha leader gathered everyone in the tribe. The Yin Jiao people used to speak another language. Who knows it? Teach them. Everyone else, learn it. It will be useful in the future. When the Taiha's letter arrived in Yin Jiao's hands again, Yin Jiao had already obtained the map drawn by Wu He and the others. They discussed a solution. Xiao Xian wrote another reply and placed a universal I in the bamboo tube. Here, there's another letter. You still want to send it? Are you King kidding me? The Changle's leader was unwilling. Forget it. Just kill Wu He and the others. Of course, this was completely out of anger. The Changle's leader couldn't just abandon Wu He and the others. They had already sent the letter once. The deal was half done. He wasn't willing to just give up now. However, he wouldn't personally deliver the letter this time. After all, most of the previous letters were delivered by his subordinates. He would leave the task of delivering letters to them. The Changle's leader had his own plans. He didn't want to waste time on this. Xiao Xian didn't care if the Changle's leader was the one who delivered the letter. He only cared about whether the letter could be delivered safely and whether the person who delivered the letter could continue to keep it a secret. During this period of time, many things happened on the mainland. The biggest change was, of course, the merging of the Hui tribe's fire seed. Xiao Xian could sense the changes in the fire seed. Perhaps others couldn't sense it, but Xiao Xian, Gui Zhe, and the 2 retired shamans all sensed it. This was just the beginning. Following the Hui tribe's change, the other tribes in the central region also started to experience the same changes. They had been observing the situation. The Hui tribe's success made them more determined to do so. While the ancient fire seed had its benefits, there were too many restrictions. Plus, as more and more people from the other mainland came to this place, they were anxious. They sent people to look for Xiao Xian to ask for more details about merging the fire seed. Although they had asked before, they couldn't afford any mistakes when it came to the fire seed. They would rather spend more time and effort asking again and again. They didn't want anything to go wrong during the merging process. Xiao Xian believed that with these few tribes taking the lead, the other smaller tribes would also make the same choice, especially the smaller tribes that relied on the larger tribes. They would choose the path that was beneficial to them. This mainland was going to welcome a major turning point. If the primitive fire seed was extinguished, even if all the people in the tribe were alive, they would be no different from dead people. They were very clear about the living conditions of the wanderers. However, if the fire seed was merged, even if the entire tribe died, there was still a possibility of a comeback. As long as the fire seed was not extinguished, the fire would not be extinguished. As long as there was a little blood, the tribe would never disappear. Chapter 697. After sensing the changes in the Longboat tribe's fire seed, Xiao Xian told Duo Kong to start preparing. While they were communicating with the Taihe tribe, they had already planned everything out. The map drawn by Wu He and the other four wasn't complete and wasn't very nice to look at, but the general area was marked out. There were many things that Xiao Xian wanted to know. Although Wu He and the others worked together to steal Yanjiao's grains, they didn't work together often on the other side of the sea. They went to different places, so they were familiar with different places. If one of them made a mistake, the others would correct it, because Xiao Xian said that there would be no special treatment if they made a mistake. The Taihe tribe's reply also gave them a map of the forest. The Taihe tribe's chief couldn't decide which route was more convenient and less dangerous, so they took out their treasured map. It was something that even Zheng Luo and the others didn't know about. In order to find herbs, the ancestors of the Taihe tribe would leave for a year or even longer. They would draw a rough map of the places they went. Generation after generation, the maps were constantly perfected. They had a more complete and detailed map in their hands. Although it was only about herbs, it could still be used as an important reference. That way, they could also avoid unnecessary trouble and danger. Xiao Xian compared the maps given by Wu He and the Taihe tribe, then combined it with the topography and tribe distribution. After discussing with the others, they decided to take another route. The continental plate on the other side of the sea was in the shape of a V. The bottom of the V was where Xiao Xian brought his people to cross the sea. It was also the closest point between the two continents. However, since last year, the slave master's army had occupied that area and stationed themselves along the coastline. It wasn't easy to get there. They wouldn't let a tribe cross the sea so easily, especially one that had good relations with Yanjiao. The Taihe tribe's chief probably thought of this reason too, so he took out his treasure map. If Yanjiao didn't send a letter from Chonglu, they wouldn't have taken this risk. They didn't trust the Chonglis, but they trusted Yanjiao. In the end, they still preferred the sea route. In a letter they wrote back, they also asked for Yanjiao's opinion. When they were there, Xiao Xian knew that from where the Taihe tribe was, if they walked deeper into the forest, there would be a wider river. That river could cut through the entire forest. If they walked along the river, they might reach the sea. However, it was too far away, and no one in the Yanjiao tribe had ever seen it. They had only heard about it from some tribesmen who came from there. On the map given by the Taihe tribe, there were some relevant routes. That river did indeed lead to the sea. The Taihe chief also mentioned his thoughts in his letter. He did plan to walk along the river, but he would not go near it. There were too many crocodiles by the river, and no one wanted to provoke those terrifying beasts, especially when there was an even more terrifying giant crocodile in the river. But what should they do when they reached the seaside? Build your own ship? Their shipbuilding skills were not good. Moreover, they were able to identify the direction in the forest, but would they get lost in the sea? They did not have any confidence at all. Xiao Xian's plan was to send people to help them. Where would the ship come from? The longboat tribe would agree to Yanjiao's request to build a ship. They had the intention to explore the sea for a long time, just looking at the newly built ships. If they only wanted to sail on the river, they did not need those designs. In the past, because of the fire seed, they could not leave their tribe for long periods of time. But now, their ambitions had begun. It could be said that other than the Hui tribe, the longboat tribe was the most eager to merge their fire seed among the other major tribes. This time, they could cooperate with the longboat tribe. Before the longboat tribe merged their fire seed, they sent people to ask Xiao Xian about the details of merging the fire seed. Xiao Xian also asked them about the rivers on this side of the continent. The longboat tribe had never been to the Flaming River, so they did not know about it. However, they knew a little about the central region and the grasslands. They just never told anyone. This time, because of the fire seed, they told Xiao Xian about it. On the other side of the grassland, there was a river that extended all the way to the end of the grassland. There were many high mountains there. Although there were fearsome beasts, there were far fewer of them compared to the fearsome beast forest and the forest behind the Flaming Horn tribe. This was because the rocks and soil there were not suitable for plants to grow. There were no dense ancient forests, and there were not many types of beasts either. The most abundant species were probably eagles. The eagles of the Tian Shan tribe and the giant mountain eagles of the Hui tribe mostly lived there. The river meandered through the mountains all the way to the sea. This was what the ancestors of the Longboat tribe knew. They knew even more about it than the Hui and Tian Shan tribes of the grasslands. To the Longboat tribe, the river was like a blood vessel, and the ship was their blood vessel. Both were extremely important. Perhaps this route was longer than the one Xiao Xian and the others took, but it was relatively safer. The only thing they had to worry about was the uncertainty of the sea. However, the Taiha people dared to gamble on the sea. They did not want to meet the slave masters directly. After all, they were migrating their entire tribe, bringing the elderly, children, and those who had not awakened their totemic power. As long as they did not go too far from the coast, even if they encountered danger, they would not be wiped out. That's it, Xiao Xian discussed with the others in the room. He would be going with them this time. Originally, he planned to let Xiao Xian and Duo Kong lead the group since they were the most familiar with the Taiha people. However, in the end, Zheng Luo decided to let Xiao Xian and Duo Kong lead the group while he stayed at the Flaming River trading point. It was not that Zheng Luo did not want to go. He actually missed his old friends and hoped that they could come and help them. However, he knew that the Longboat tribe cared about Xiao Xian the most. Other than Xiao Xian, the Longboat tribe was not afraid of the Yinjiao tribe. With Xiao Xian around, Zheng Luo felt more at ease. Xiao Xian and Duo Kong were going to lead the group to the Longboat tribe. Then, they would travel with the Longboat tribe to the grasslands through the sea. The Longboat tribe was familiar with the sea routes. If they could go according to plan and enter the sea from there, they would be able to sail directly to the other continent and avoid the conflicts along the coastline. They would then meet up with the Taiha tribe at the agreed location. After counting the number of people, Xiao Xian brought along the equipment they had prepared and boarded the ship. They would go to the Longboat tribe with Duo Kong and the others. After leaving this time, it would be next year when they returned with the group. They needed to go out to sea before winter to avoid the river freezing. Chapter 698. This time, Xiao Xian and Duo Kong brought a total of 200 people, so they couldn't bring any more. There was also a drumming tribesman in the group, Qing Yi. Back then, he was only an intermediate totemic warrior, but now he was an advanced totemic warrior. Qing Yi often brought groups out to trade, so he was one of the more experienced people in the drumming tribe. Qing Yi's eyes were also brown. In the drumming tribe, people with brown eyes had a gentle temperament and weren't easily irritable or rash. This time, Qing Yi took the initiative to ask Xiao Xian if he wanted to go with them. He had brought groups to the Pu tribe many times before to trade, but in terms of long journeys, it didn't count. Compared to the long journeys of other tribes, it was like a joke. So this time, when Qing Yi saw that Yin Jiao was going on another long journey, he requested to go with them to broaden his horizons. If there were no accidents, Qing Yi would already be the next chief. When Fan Mu stepped down, Qing Yi would take over. No matter what, the next chief of a tribe should have broader horizons, but the drumming tribe's range of activities was too small. They only knew about many things after the Flaming River trading point was built, and it was only limited to hearsay. Therefore, Qing Yi wanted to take this opportunity to go out and take a look to see what a real long journey was like. He didn't expect that Yin Jiao's journey this time would be even further than the other tribes. Not only did Qing Yi not give up, he even looked forward to it. Yin Jiao had a type of water sunstone that they got from the other side of the sea. If there was a chance, he wanted to see what was there. Xiao Xian didn't reject him. Qing Yi could control his temper and wouldn't be impulsive. He wouldn't say anything that needed to be kept a secret. When Xiao Xian brought his people to the Longboat tribe, a long stretch of the river that flowed through the Longboat tribe was blocked. However, there weren't many long journeys that way, so Xiao Xian didn't see any boats that were blocked. When he heard that the Yin Jiao people had finally arrived, the chief of the Longboat tribe, Mu Fa, quickly walked out of the tribe. "You're finally here." He had received a letter from Yin Jiao a long time ago and was eager to make all the preparations. In order to protect the ship, they even sealed off the river. Before they merged with the Fire Seed, they had agreed to Yin Jiao's conditions. This time, Yin Jiao's people were going out to sea, This was exactly what the longboat tribe wanted. They had been looking forward to this day for a long, long time. Everything was ready. After waiting for several days, they finally saw Yin Jiao's ship coming over. "You guys are too slow," Mu Fei complained. "When are we leaving? We can set sail anytime." Xiao Xian looked at the river. When he first came to the longboat tribe, there were many large and small boats docked on the river in front of the longboat tribe. Now, all the other boats had disappeared. Only 15 boats were docked there. 10 large boats and 5 small boats. Of course, that was only relative because the 5 small boats were the same size as the 2 that the longboat tribe gave to Yinjiao. They should have been built in the same batch. Xiao Xian had suspected when the longboat tribe gave the longboat tribe their ships that the longboat tribe might have greater ambitions and even hidden better things in the dark. Now he finally saw it. The 10 large boats were twice the size of the boat that Xiao Xian and the others were on now. At first glance, it was obvious that they had been built not long ago and had never been used before. After the merging of the fire seed, the ambition of the longboat tribe seemed to have been ignited. If Yinjiao hadn't proposed to go out to sea this time, the longboat tribe might not have exposed the 10 boats so early. "What, are you scared?" Mu Fei saw the surprise in the eyes of the Yinjiao people and showed a smug look. "How many boats did you think we would take out?" "What? Small boats? Are you kidding? Are you sure you want to go out to sea and not go out to play? You think there are only 10 boats? What? Are you looking down on the longboat tribe? Since when did the longboat tribe only send out 10 ships for long trips?" Xiao Xian went on a tour of the boat, while Mu Fei was chatting with Duo Kong and the others. The internal structure was similar to the 2 boats that the longboat tribe gave them. The boats were designed with watertight compartments, and the masts and sails were also improved. It was more suitable for sailing in stormy areas. No one would have thought that an inland tribe had been thinking about how to go out to sea. Because they were in a hurry to go out to sea, the longboat tribe was led by Chief Mu Fei himself. Without the fire seed, they could leave the tribe for a longer period of time without worrying about their strength deteriorating. There were nearly 300 people from the longboat tribe on this trip with Mu Fei. On average, there were only about 20 people on each boat. 20 people could control a large boat very well. Rowing with manpower? If there was a need, weren't there still Yinjiao people? The boat was already filled with supplies, enough for them to travel for a long time. The longboat tribe didn't have as much jerky made from fearsome beast meat as Yinjiao, but they had other substitutes. For example, they had some grains that were unique to their tribe. They never traded them and only kept them for themselves. Every year, the expedition team would bring some with them. For this trip, because they didn't have much time to prepare, they bought a lot of other food that could be stored for a long time from other tribes. Not only were the longboat people anxious, but the Yinjiao people also didn't want to delay. Therefore, after staying in the longboat tribe for a night of rest, the team set off early the next morning. The longboat tribe's boat was in front. They were familiar with the waterways and led the way. Among the people on the trip, Xiao Xian saw a few familiar faces, such as Mu Yu. The longboat tribe spent most of their time on the boat, running along the rivers. They also had to have the necessary knowledge. Observing the weather was a skill that many crew members had to learn. They could judge the weather early and make preparations in advance to reduce losses. Mu Yu was an elder of the longboat tribe and was considered an expert in observing the weather. However, Mu Yu didn't dare to look directly at Xiao Xian. When he was looking for the green-faced fanged beast in the fearsome beast forest, Mu Yu had been slapped in the face by Xiao Xian. Now that the 2 tribes were working together, Mu Yu wouldn't directly show his displeasure. He just looked awkward and tried to avoid contact with Xiao Xian. As soon as he saw Xiao Xian, Mu Yu would remember how he was slapped in the face. He was an expert in observing the weather, but he was wrong. The most embarrassing thing was that most people chose to believe Xiao Xian and not him. Fortunately, not many people knew about this. Xiao Xian asked the longboat tribe for another boat. They didn't have a big boat, but the longboat tribe still had a lot of smaller boats. Because they were in a hurry to go out to sea, Mu Fei didn't hesitate this time and readily agreed. In order to make up a round number, He directly transferred 2 more boats. Although they were used, there were no quality problems. The longboat tribe still attached great importance to the maintenance of boats. 20 boats, in this place where boats were rare, was not a small scale. Especially the 10 boats at the front, they were quite eye-catching. Everywhere they passed, there were always many people who stopped to watch. They waited until the 20 boats left and couldn't be seen anymore before they retracted their gazes. Shipbuilding also required talent. Why didn't the longboat tribe's boats sink easily? This involved a lot of secrets. Even if someone copied and made the same shape, they wouldn't be able to make the same quality. Moreover, the longboat tribe used some new bronze that they bought from Yinjiao at a high price. They couldn't get the new bronze, and Yinjiao wasn't stupid enough to tell them the secrets of the new bronze. The longboat ships were also needed by Yinjiao, so there was such a mutually beneficial deal. The longboat tribe would rather use stone tools than skimp on the boat. Therefore, the quality of these 20 boats was also trusted by Xiao Xian. If there was anyone who could make the most reliable sailing boats, it would be the longboat tribe. Of course, outsiders didn't know about this deal. Those who stood on the shore and watched the fleet at first thought that this was another big operation by the longboat tribe. However, those who paid closer attention realized that this wasn't the case. There were also Yinjiao people among them. How did they know Yinjiao people? Yinjiao had become famous on this continent for a while because of the trading zone and the king beast. Now, many people knew about Yinjiao's flame totem symbol. The fleet followed the waterway, led by the longboat tribe, and arrived at the grassland. The grassland was very large. If it weren't for the longboat tribe's guidance, Xiao Xian wouldn't have known that there was such a waterway. This was a route that Xiao Xian and the others had never taken before. As they sailed forward, Xiao Xian perfected the map. The further they went, the more doubts Xiao Xian had. The tribes living on both sides of the river seemed to be used to the longboat tribe's behavior. At most, they were amazed by the longboat tribe's shipbuilding skills. When they could only use canoes or rafts, the longboat tribe could already build boats that were many times bigger than their tribe's largest tent. Other than having to use more strength to go against the current, they didn't encounter any big obstacles along the way. First, there were very few giant beasts in the river. Second, the tribes living here were very familiar with the longboat tribe and didn't want to provoke the longboat tribe. When they reached the end of the grassland, Xiao Xian saw the people of the Hui tribe. When Xiao Xian set off from the tribe, he asked Cha-Cha to bring a message to the Hui tribe. Now Cha-Cha was waiting here with the Hui tribe. A few people from the longboat tribe would follow them in case they encountered other giant mountain eagles. With the Hui tribe, it was slightly safer to avoid the attack of the giant mountain eagles. The river meandered through the mountains. Xiao Xian asked Mu Fa, was there really such a route from the longboat to the grassland and then past these mountains? Mu Fa paused and looked at the direction of the river in front of him. It was as if he could see through time and space. Of course there wasn't. The reason why it can flow through is because the longboat tribe drove it ourselves. Otherwise, how could it be so smooth? What do you think the longboat tribe's fleet goes to do every year? Mu Fa said meaningfully. Many rivers originally didn't intersect, but because of the longboat tribe, they intersected and connected, connecting the most suitable rivers and exploring the most suitable waterways. The longboat tribe planned all of this. Human power created this route to the sea. Chapter 699. No matter how unhappy he was with the longboat tribe in the past, Xiao Xian had to admit that the longboat tribe was indeed admirable. So your ancestors have been planning this for a long time. It's a pity that we didn't realize it. Someone from the Hui tribe exclaimed. No matter how shocked and astonished they were, when the river finally flowed into the sea, all their emotions changed. The others were fine, but the longboat tribe became excited. It was as if they had awakened another personality in their hearts. This is the feeling of the sea. Mu Fa looked at the boundless sea and closed his eyes to feel the rise and fall of the boat in the waves. He took a deep breath and slowly opened his eyes to look at the horizon. At this moment, not only Mu Fa, But the other longboat tribe members also had the same feeling. The pride and excitement in their hearts suddenly seemed to be magnified countless times. They had entered the sea. They had really entered the sea. Among them, some had seen the sea before. When they went to the desert, they had also seen it, but they had never really taken a boat into it. In the past, every time they saw the sea, they seemed to be able to hear a deep call from the boundless blue. Although the water here was not blue, if they went further, they would definitely see the vast blue that they had been hiding in their hearts and looking forward to all this time. Their hearts were filled with yearning and longing for a greater future. An endless courage and fighting spirit rose within them. In the past, although the Longboat tribe was known as one of the largest tribes, when people talked about the Longboat tribe, it was only the boat river fire and not the great things they had done. They seemed to have always been sailing along the river aimlessly. Some people thought that they were showing off their shipbuilding skills, some thought that they were just going on a long trip to trade, and some thought that the Longboat tribe was looking for a target, but no one really knew what their purpose was. It seemed that they had nothing to do other than going on long trips to trade and going back and forth on the boat. Generation after generation, no one knew how many years had passed before the Longboat tribe finally opened up this route. In the past, because of the fire seed, they could not go far and set foot on that vast land. But now, without restrictions, their opportunity had come. It was no longer a winding river, but a vast sea. To them, the vast sea in front of them was boundless, heroic, and so enchanting. They could not help but be ambitious and full of fighting spirit. The fire seed in their bodies seemed to be activated with the outburst of their emotions. The fire seed that had not completely merged began to condense and permeate into their blood. Whoosh! One by one, flames appeared on the bodies of the Longboat tribe members along with the totem patterns on their bodies. Their blood was boiling, and every cell in their bodies seemed to be screaming and roaring. Generations of the Longboat tribe's ambitions. At this moment, they were finally fully awakened. The glory that originated from their bloodline and the ambition that had awakened allowed them to not shrink back even in the face of the monstrous waves of the endless sea. Mu-Fa stood at the bow of the first ship and roared, "My longboat, keep going. Unstoppable. My great longboat will never stop moving forward. Unstoppable ours. Unstoppable. Our. Unstoppable." The 15 longboat tribe members on the 15 ships roared, as if they wanted to release all their pent-up emotions. They were the first fleet to truly step into the sea, and the first longboat tribe to cross the sea and set foot on another continent in thousands of years. Because they were sailing against the current, they had to use manpower to row the boats. That was why there were Yin-Jiao members on every ship. On one of the ships, Guang, he looked at the excited longboat tribe members and asked Duo Kong, "What's wrong with the longboat tribe?" "Nothing, they're just crazy," Duo Kong replied. Guang, "Oh." Not far from them, a longboat tribe member turned to look at the calm Guang, and Duo Kong. He asked curiously, "Don't you feel excited?" Duo Kong shook his head. "No." That person choked for a moment and asked again, unwilling to give up, "Do you feel a burning passion that can't wait to roar out?" Duo Kang's face was expressionless. No. The man looked at Duo Kong like he was an idiot, as if to say, "The warriors of the longboat tribe have nothing in common with you mortals." Duo Kong pursed his lips. "What's there to be proud about crossing the sea on a boat? We followed the Grand Elder from the other continent. I didn't say it because I didn't want to scare you." The two sides looked at each other with disdain. After sailing on the sea for a period of time, the longboat tribesmen's initial excitement had cooled down a little, but they were still occasionally crazy. Compared to the river, the sea was ever-changing. When it was calm, there was a peaceful atmosphere. Whether it was the Yin-Jiao or the longboat tribe, they still had the mood to fish, watch the sunrise and sunset, chat and chat. When the weather suddenly changed, there was no shore to shelter from the wind and waves. They could only go head-on. On the vast sea, the fleet was pitifully small, isolated and without help, swaying with the wind and waves. Facing the majestic waves under the wind and rain, the longboat tribe members seemed to be on steroids. They controlled the boats to prevent the boats from being overturned by the waves. At the same time, they shouted at the waves, "Forward! Attack!" Xiao Xian suddenly felt that the longboat tribe members were no longer as calm as before. Instead, there was a strange aura of banditry in the calm and angry waves. The fleet sailed towards their destination. When they were sailing on the sea, they would often detect huge sea beasts swimming under their fleet. Once, a fish that was almost as long as the 5 smaller ships behind them rushed out of the sea and jumped out of the water. The next moment, a huge beast with sharp teeth broke out of the water and bit the fish that jumped out, leaving only the tail outside. Then, the giant beast took its prey back into the deep sea. When the giant beast hunted for food, it would set off huge waves that almost overturned the boats. This happened more than once. Sometimes, they would retaliate and kill the fish that attacked the fleet. The weather was getting colder by the day. Snow had already begun to fall, but it was not heavy. Xiao Xian looked ahead with his binoculars. "There's land." When Mu Fa heard this, he hurriedly took the binoculars from Xiao Xian and looked carefully. Then, he laughed and said, "We're here. We're here. We're finally here." There was land in front of them. From what they could see, it should be a mountainous area. They followed the universal eyes to find their way here, but they only had a vague idea of where it was. What they needed to do now was to follow the land and find a large river that entered the sea. They had agreed to meet the Taiha tribe at the estuary. But the current situation was that they could not pinpoint the exact location. They did not know which direction to go at this time. After all, no one knew where the river was. If they chose the wrong direction, they would waste more time. "What do we do?" Mu Fa looked at Xiao Xian. "Wait." Xiao Xian left and used the knot divination to choose the direction. Fortunately, the knot was a success. After reading the conclusion, Xiao Xian pointed in a direction and told Mu Fa to let the fleet head there. Mu Fa looked at Xiao Xian, then at the other Yinjiao people. Seeing that they had no objections, he let the longboat fleet sail in that direction. After all, they had already achieved their goal of sailing to another land. They had already fulfilled their ancestors' wish. As for picking them up, that was something the Yinjiao should worry about. The longboat people did not care. However, before that, they had to go ashore to replenish their food and water. It would be best if they could stock up on some juicy fruits. Although the distribution of plants in the forest here was slightly different, there were still many familiar plants. Duo Kong and Guang, he recognized them. They had never seen them on the other land. Now that they were back here, looking at the unique fruits on this land, Duo Kong was filled with emotions. "I didn't expect to be back so soon." On the longboat tribe side, Mu Fa was the first to jump off the boat before it even stopped. He wanted to be the first person on the longboat to cross the sea and set foot on another land. Ignoring the maniacal laughter of the longboat people, Xiao Xian quickly ordered people to find food and water. After a short rest, they still had to set off. After resting for a night at the shore, the fleet set off again, heading in the direction Xiao Xian pointed out. They searched along the coastline. 2 days later, they finally saw a wide river flowing into the sea. Chapter 700. "It's here, right?" Duo Kong asked Xiao Xian as they got closer to the shore. "It should be here." "Let's land first," Xiao Xian said. Hearing Xiao Xian's words, Duo Kong also called out to the other Yinjiao tribesmen. "Prepare to land." When the first boat finally reached the shore, Mu Fa suddenly shouted, "Everyone stop!" While everyone else was stunned by Mu Fa's sudden roar, Mu Fa leaped into the water. His face was still red from excitement as he stood in the cold water. After laughing out loud, he raised his head and said to the other longboat tribesmen on the boat, "Come down, all of you." Seeing this, Duo Kong despised him. Didn't he just want to be the first to land here? It was the same when they first landed 2 days ago. Mu Fa used the fact that he was the chief and wanted to be the first to do everything. This was because he was recorded in the history of a longboat tribe as the first chief to lead a team into the sea, the first chief to successfully land on a foreign land, and the first to reach this place. What's this place called? Mu-Fa suddenly remembered. He didn't know the name of this place. How would he record it down if he didn't know the name? How would he leave it for the future generations of the Longboat tribe? After hundreds and thousands of years, who would know where you'd landed? What if the future generations thought they were the first to discover this place? Crocodile River, Xiao Xian said. Duo Kong, Guang, Yi, and the others all looked at Xiao Xian in confusion. When did this name come up? How come I didn't know it was called Crocodile River? I just named it, Xiao Xian said calmly when he saw their confusion. Then he asked people to prepare a monument, just like at the Flaming River. Mu-Fa thought it was a pity. If this river didn't have a name, he would imitate Yinjiao and give a name. Longboat River, Mu-Fa River, and so on. He didn't expect Xiao Xian to name it on the spot. Mu-Fa didn't want to argue with Xiao Xian. Plus, he was one step behind Yinjiao, so there was no need to argue. However, when he found a new place or a new river without a name, he would imitate the Yinjiao people and name it. Then he would put a monument with the totem of the Longboat tribe. He didn't believe there was only one river. Xiao Xian looked at the river in front of him. It was about the same size as the Flaming River. If this is the main river that passes through the forest, there should be crocodiles living in this river. However, it's winter now, so those crocodiles might be hiding or gathering in warmer parts of the river to spend the winter. Mu-Fa nodded. He had been to the Flaming River trading point and saw the drumming tribesmen riding crocodiles from the drumming tribe to the trading point. That was why he knew what crocodiles Xiao Xian was talking about. Everyone be careful. Although those crocodiles might not be here right now, we still need to be vigilant. This is a forest full of fearsome beasts. Mu-Fa warned the Longboat tribe warriors. After all, the Longboat tribe rarely came into contact with an environment like this, so they couldn't get used to it immediately. Some of them might even be careless in small details. If he didn't warn and pressure them, it would be too late for regrets if something happened. I once saw a huge crocodile in this river. That's the biggest threat. If you encounter it, retreat decisively. Run away from the river and the sea. Don't go to the boat. The boat's speed is far slower than the crocodiles. Could it be a king beast? As a drumming tribesman, Qing Yi was very interested in the crocodile Xiao Xian mentioned. No, it's not a king beast yet, but it should be close. Qing Yi thought for a moment and said to Xiao Xian, "There aren't any crocodiles around here, but I think there might be something I need in this river. I want to take a look." The drumming tribesmen were good at water, so Qing Yi didn't enter the water at the estuary. Instead, he walked upstream for a while. The people around him were chopping trees to build houses or hunting for food. If he met with an accident, he could ask for help in time. After confirming the location of the river, Qing Yi took a deep breath and jumped into the water. The drumming tribesmen didn't like winter and the cold river water, but in order to find what he wanted, Qing Yi couldn't care less. The totemic power in his body started to circulate. With the appearance of the totemic patterns, Qing Yi's skin started to thicken and the cold river water became less irritating. After fusing with the fire seed, he became more familiar with the usage of his power. Under the fire seed's influence, his totemic power became pure. Making water moonstones also trained his skills. In order to save as much energy as possible, he could use the power in his body to every place he needed to use it. He was very precise and didn't waste too much energy. Xiao Xian and Duo Kong discussed the layout of the camp. They didn't know when the Taihe tribe would arrive, so just in case, it was better to be prepared. They couldn't sleep on the boat forever. After winter, I didn't know if the sea near the coast would freeze. While waiting for the Taihe tribe, they still had to learn how to maintain the boat from the Longboat tribe. They also had to check and repair the boat often. Otherwise, after winter, the boat wouldn't be able to be used anymore. How could they go back? When building the camp, Xiao Xian also got some edible plants that couldn't be found on the other side of the sea. He also got some herbs that could be used to make medicine. He planned to bring them back when the time came. The herbs that didn't wither in winter were dug up, and the withered ones that could be found as seeds were collected. Of course, if the seeds were too big, it wouldn't be convenient to bring them back. They could use methods like layering, cutting, or splitting. Maybe now wasn't the best time, but Xiao Xian had no choice. They couldn't stay here forever. While the Yin Jiao people were collecting plants or catching animals suitable for breeding, the people on the Longboat tribe seemed to have come to their senses. Xiao Xian saw that Mu Fa couldn't stay idle all day. He brought people everywhere. This, and this. Dig them all up and bring them back. What's this? It's so ugly. Whatever, bring it back too. Wait, who's that? Where did you get this snake? Did you dig it out when you were digging for grass? I've never seen that pattern before. Bring it back too. What? The Yin Jiao people said that it's highly poisonous? Forget it. Let's just kill it and eat it. Other than the time spent building the camp, Mu Fa and the Longboat tribe followed the Yin Jiao people to dig for herbs and catch animals. They didn't rest or feel tired. They were always in high spirits. After the campsite was built, the outer perimeter of the campsite was also surrounded by a circle of tall tree trunks, forming a wall that could prevent some unnecessary trouble. Yin Jiao and the Longboat tribe discussed and decided to use the trees here to build a new ship. This was planned before they set off, so Xiao Xian and the others also brought some new bronze, which was used to build ships. The Longboat tribe's shipbuilding technology had been improving. After going to the sea and seeing the ocean environment, the Longboat tribe people had more requirements for ships. Only by constantly improving the ship could they satisfy their ambitions. In the past, the wood used to build ships was carefully selected. They even let a few tribes rely on them to plant trees and then choose the best wood from those trees. However, those trees couldn't compare to the trees Yin Jiao cut from the forest. This time, they mainly used the wood provided by Yin Jiao. A lot of wood required a lot of materials to trade, but here, the best wood was ownerless. They could cut down whichever wood they liked, as long as they didn't provoke the hibernating beasts. Since the Longboat tribe had better wood and the new bronze produced by Yin Jiao, Mu Fa had to think more about this trip to the sea. They needed to let the Longboat tribe truly start a new era and realize the dream that their ancestors had been looking forward to for generations. They needed to continuously modify and innovate the ship. Due to the limitations of wood, they had designed turreted ships. They built a multi-storied ship on the ship and used it as a warship or command ship. In addition, Mu Fa also planned to explore a fixed route and find a suitable place to be a port. Only then could they set up a large-scale sailing fleet. They wanted to develop the inland river fleet from the mainland into a truly strong sailing fleet. Their technology needed to be improved continuously. Anchors, sails, docks, paddle wheels, Mu Fa constantly thought about how to innovate and improve in his free time. This trip gave him a lot of inspiration. From time to time, he gathered a group of talented longboat people to discuss. Xiao Xian once took a look at Mu Fa's design. It was very simple. Xiao Xian didn't understand many of the labels. Perhaps it was because of this that Mu Fa let Xiao Xian take a look at it. But just from those things, Xiao Xian knew that the longboat people were indeed geniuses when it came to shipbuilding. In the near future, when the longboat tribe people learn more about sailing, they might be much more powerful than Xiao Xian thought. They would be more adapted to the ocean and river environment of this world and era. In fact, many civilizations that started with agriculture were more gentle. They weren't keen on expanding their territory. Instead, they were more inclined towards peace and a moderate mentality. They paid attention to inheritance and took care of things from generation to generation. They only wanted stability and stability. If they weren't provoked, they would rarely take the initiative to attack. Yin Jiao, to a certain extent, was more inclined towards agriculture. Although there were hunting and many wars in Yin Jiao's history, they rarely took the initiative to attack. The difference was that even if the longboat tribe also farmed, they were more inclined towards sailing. Especially after the sea route was opened, they would develop in another direction. In terms of climate and environment, the sea was far more unpredictable than the land. Just as Mu Fa said, they had to constantly improve their ships and tools to ensure that they could survive on the ever-changing sea that contained great power. Following this, their temperament would also change. They would no longer be conservative and would become more outgoing. During this period of contact and observation, Xiao Xian discovered that the Longboat tribe people had already begun to show signs of aggression. Of course, this wasn't towards Yinjiao, but towards those unknown places, as well as more people and lands that they were curious about. Great Elder Xiao Xian, look, are these the water sun stones you were talking about? Qing Yi brought over a piece of crystal. During this time, he had found a lot of raw stones similar to the water sun stones in the river. Perhaps others might not be able to distinguish those stones from ordinary stones, but for the drumming tribe people, it was as simple as distinguishing between black and white. Xiao Xian took the stone, covered it with his hand, and looked at it. He nodded and said, "Yes, this is it." Xiao Xian returned the crystal that had changed from a raw stone to a water sun stone to Qing Yi. He remembered something. There are a lot of metals here, but relatively speaking, there are very few beautiful crystals. So many crystals that have no practical use for us are very popular here. Those who don't lack food and have a slightly higher standard of living will choose some rare crystals to wear. This can show their uniqueness, especially the slave owners. The rarer the crystal, the more they like it, and the more it reflects their superior status. Hearing that the water sunstones could be sold at a high price here, Qing Yi's heart was suddenly excited, but soon he was disappointed. It's a pity that our drumming tribe is far from the coast and can't come here often. But the drumming tribe people didn't have much ambition. Qing Yi only felt a little regret for a moment and didn't care anymore. Instead, it was Mu Fa who was quite interested in this. When Qing Yi and Xiao Xian were talking, he had been eavesdropping. Because it didn't involve any secrets that couldn't be said, Xiao Xian didn't stop him from eavesdropping. Now, Qing Yi didn't say anything, but Mu Fa suddenly said, "Actually, you can make a deal with our Longboat tribe. Water moonstones were found in many places on the other side of the continent, and there were even many glowing crystals similar to water moonstones." But now that he had encountered a tribe that produced water moonstones, Mu Fa wouldn't let go of this opportunity. Their Longboat tribe would continue to travel between the two continents in the future. He even planned to open the first sea trading route. Perhaps this would become a thorn in the side of the slave owners, but the Longboat people would absolutely not care. Not only would they not be restrained, they would be even more unscrupulous. The first sea trading route. Thinking about it, Mu Fa was so excited that he wanted to jump a few times. After the camp was built, the first new ship would also be built. The Yinjiao people were responsible for cutting down trees. The Longboat people were responsible for building, and Yinjiao also had a share in the new ship. Xiao Xian wasn't afraid that the Longboat people would play tricks on the ship. The Longboat tribe temporarily couldn't handle the changing sea environment alone. They would continue to rely on Yinjiao's help. When they encountered difficult decisions, they would find Yinjiao to negotiate. They didn't want to act alone. They needed to exchange benefits with each other to achieve a win-win result. As for Qing Yi, he had offered to help, but in terms of strength, Qing Yi couldn't compare to the Yinjiao people. In terms of shipbuilding skills, he stopped at making wooden rafts and bamboo rafts. When Qing Yi offered to help, whether it was the Yinjiao people or the Longboat people, they all laughed and said, "Go play on the side." Therefore, Qing Yi was now looking for those water sunstones in the river. After staying in this place for 15 days, Cha-Cha finally brought good news. Xiao Xian heard the eagle cry in the air and said, "The Taya people are here." "What? They're finally here?" Duo Kong, who was carrying a piece of wood, threw it aside and ran in the direction Xiao Xian pointed. He hadn't seen his old neighbors for so long, and he wondered how they were doing. Chapter 701. When Xiao Xian saw the Taiha people, Zheng Luo, Guang Yi, and the rest were already talking to their old neighbors. Looking at the state of the Taiha tribesmen, Xiao Xian realized that they looked even worse than when the Flaming Horns first migrated from the forest to the sea. Their clothes were torn and tattered with scratches from tree branches and beast bites. Even though they were wearing thick animal hides, he could still see dried blood and hideous wounds on their bodies. Migrating a tribe was not an easy task, but many times, in order for the tribe to survive and develop, they had to make some sacrifices. This was something that most tribes had experienced, regardless of their strength. Luckily, Xiao Xian noticed that although the Taiha people were in bad shape, most of them still made it here alive. I've been worried that we've gone the wrong way. I didn't think we'd really make it. Feiyong of Taiha was familiar with Tao Zheng and the rest. He didn't even rest when he saw them, panting and laughing as he walked over. Duo Kong was talking to the Taiha chief, Yu. He understood the current situation of the Taiha people and introduced the other unfamiliar faces in the Yinjiao team to them. He also introduced the people from the longboat. Guang, he also started chatting with his old friend. After walking for so long, enduring the pressure brought by the uncertainty of their future, experiencing many difficulties and obstacles, the moment they finally saw an old acquaintance, the people of Taiha were so excited that they cried. Even the usually serious elders couldn't help but tear up. Guang Yi looked at his old friend and smiled brightly. Long time no see, Ji Peng. In front of Guang Yi, the person who was crying due to all kinds of complicated emotions held back his tears. His face was stiff as he pointed to the side. Ji Peng is over there. I'm Hui Ji. Guang Yi paused, then smiled warmly. Long time no see, Hui Ji. Guang Yi was still the same. He couldn't recognize people after a while. Hui Ji thought, take care of the weak, especially the weak children and the injured who hadn't awakened their totemic power. They weren't like the others. Even if they made it here, even if their lives weren't in danger, they could still die if they weren't careful. After inquiring about the condition of the injured, Duo Kong came over to Xiao Xian and told him about Tai's current situation. There were about 4,000 people in Taiha, and about 3,500 of them made it here alive. Nearly 500 people have been lost along the way. Part of it was because of the ferocious beasts in the forest and the various dangerous environments, and part of it was man-made. The first thing Duo Kong thought of was the green-faced fang beast. Xiao Xian knew the green-faced fang beast could help with forging because of Hong. There was no way the Xia slave masters wouldn't know about this. In the past, they might have thought that it didn't matter if they couldn't find it. They had weapons made by the Gongjia family that were much better than normal weapons. That was enough. But now that the two continents were getting closer, the threat was greater. Perhaps they had even suffered a great loss at the hands of Rock Hill City, so they were eager to find a solution. It's a good thing that it's winter now. Many beasts are hibernating. That's why they didn't suffer any losses. Duo Kong sighed. They had migrated before too, so they knew what it was like to move a tribe. It wasn't just physical fatigue, it was also psychological stress. Those who couldn't handle it would break down. But they prepared a lot of medicine. That's why most of the people who were poisoned or seriously injured didn't die. Take care of them. We've prepared a lot of prey. Let them recover as soon as possible. They won't be able to cross the sea if they're too weak, said Xiao Xian. Duo Kong understood that life on the sea wasn't easy. Without a strong body, it would be difficult to survive. If they fell sick again, their medicine would be used up, and they wouldn't be able to replenish it. They could only wait for death. Perhaps it was because they saw hope, the huge pressure and anxiety in their hearts disappeared. After a good night's sleep, the Taiha people felt much better. Some slept even longer. They hadn't had a good rest in a long time. It was rare for them to have a relaxing environment, so they slept for a few days straight. When they woke up, they were full of energy again. Most of the people who had recovered started to look for herbs. They couldn't carry wood or build ships, but they could prepare some herbs. If they saw herbs that Yinjiao missed, they would dig them up. Are we going to take these boats and leave? Tai's chief, Yu, looked at the big boats and asked Duo Kong. Yes, these are the boats. You haven't seen them before, right? Hee. Over here, even if there were boats, they weren't very big and couldn't compare to these. Perhaps the 6 noble families of the royal city were good at other things, but when it came to building ships, they couldn't compare to the people of the longboat tribe. Especially in the past few years, when many places were dry, there were even fewer people using boats. This surprised the Taiha people. They thought that the other side might be more backward. They heard that many tribes were still primitive and used stone tools. But now, it seemed that they were too naive. This is... Yu pointed at the green axe in Duo Kang's hand. This is a gold weapon. Duo Kong was even more proud. He had wanted to show off in front of his old neighbors for a long time. He spun the axe in his hand around his palm, then grabbed the handle and chopped at a rock on the side. Bang! With a crisp sound, a deep mark was left on the rock. Yu Yu's jaw dropped. He looked at the axe in Duo Kang's hand, and then at the stone that had been split open. He walked over in disbelief and tested the hardness of the stone. Unwilling to give up, he used his axe that was already missing 2 notches to hack at it again and again. Then, he cursed under his breath and turned to look at Duo Kong, his eyes shining. "Is this the one you mentioned in the letter?" "That's right," Duo Kong said proudly. "We call it New Bronze. Great Elder Xiao Xian named it. Because it was inconvenient to say too much in the letter, he only vaguely mentioned it in the letter to the Taiha tribe. He only told them not to worry about weapons, and that Yinjiao had improved their gold weapons. It was definitely better than before. Before this, the people of Taiha had always been suspicious. After all, the Flaming Horn tribe did not have much talent in forging and farming back then. Their skills were limited, but they did not expect it to be true. Haha, there are many more things that will shock you. You will see them when it's over. Duo Kong was looking forward to seeing the Taiha people in the Yinjiao tribe today. Yinjiao was no longer what it used to be. The Taiha people would never expect this. Right? Did you really build a city? Yu Yu was very interested in this. Something like that. Zheng Luo said, "We don't have the same name as the slave masters. We'll call it City, Flaming River City." Flaming River? Really? Good, good, good. Yu Yu, the Taiha chief, exclaimed. Duo Kong was confused. "Why are you so excited?" Yinjiao named the river and named the trading point after it. "What does it have to do with you? Why are you more excited than us?" Flaming River, there's a river in it too. Ha! It feels so close. Good. Yu Yu slapped Duo Kong again and again, putting on a good brother look. Duo Kong said, "You're thinking too much. It's really because of a river." The snow here was not heavy in the winter. Only the sea near the coast had a thin layer of ice. Although the snow was not heavy, the wind was strong and it did not have a direction. As the days passed, most of the Taiha people had recovered. They helped out every day for their own sake. They prepared food, medicine, built new boats, and waited for the best time to leave. Chapter 702. Xiao Xian quickly knotted a rope in his hands. Duo Kong and Guang stared at Xiao Xian, waiting for Xiao Xian to speak. Xiao Xian looked at the conclusion on the straw rope and relaxed. "The day after tomorrow will do. It's a good day." Through the knot divination, Xiao Xian interpreted the result. The day after tomorrow was the best time to leave. Winter was ending soon. They couldn't really wait until winter was over. That would be too rushed. Many times, the beasts in the forest reacted faster than them. So it was always good to be prepared. "Then I'll go inform the Longboat tribe and Taiha tribe." Duo Kong got up excitedly and rushed out of the wooden house. He first went to find the chief of the Longboat tribe, Mu Fa. After all, they had to convince them to leave. The Longboat tribe was good at observing the weather. In the past, they were the ones making the decisions. But now, the Yinjiao people were more inclined towards Xiao Xian's decision. Even the Longboat tribe's Mu Yu, who was good at observing the weather, didn't say anything after knowing that it was Xiao Xian's decision. "Then we'll leave the day after tomorrow. Tell everyone to get ready to leave." Mu Fa was also eager to return. After leaving Mu Fa's place, Duo Kong also went to Taiha to inform them of their decision. The campsite was bustling with activity. It was like a hibernating animal waking up from its slumber to stretch its limbs and prepare for a big fight. On the day of departure, the sky, which had been gloomy for a long time, suddenly cleared up. Although the moon couldn't be seen at night and winter hadn't officially passed, it was almost time. Moreover, the rare good weather made everyone feel as if winter had left early. Get ready to return. The ice on the coast had been broken in advance. The ships wouldn't be obstructed by the ice. The ice was thick too. Places further away from the coast or near the Crocodile River were not frozen. This wasn't a big threat. There were 25 ships. Each ship had more than 100 Taiha people. Some ships had more, some had fewer. There were 5 more ships, but it was still crowded. Other than the Taiha people, there were all kinds of supplies on the ships. Among the 25 ships, 5 of them looked different from the other 20 ships. These were 5 experimental ships made by Mu Fa and his top technicians after discussion. From the outside, it was obvious that they were more aggressive. The most obvious were the few projector windows used for shooting arrows and spears. They looked more aggressive too. Mu Fa didn't plan to use these 5 ships for a long time. The reason they were used as experimental ships was because of time and conditions constraints. The wood couldn't be treated to perfection due to lack of time and conditions. Usually, when they built ships made, they didn't use the wood. The wood was dried, was dry, but there wasn't a kiln. There wasn't a kiln. So as the wood was to dry, was dry. Was dry, Tues's. Was S was for his. Was for dry was. S. Was used, was dry. It didn't look good, but it could be used. Of course, even if the wood was dried, due to the limited conditions, the amount of wood was too much. The drying effect was far from what Mu Fa wanted. However, the situation was different now. They were in a hurry to leave. They didn't have much time to dry the wood. Fortunately, these ships couldn't last long. They could still make it back. In the future, when they expanded their fleet and went out to sea again, they would find a suitable place to build a bigger camp and a large kiln to dry the wood. Mu Fa was full of energy. He just wanted to go back quickly and tell the longboat tribe about what happened here. They were only the first batch of people to explore. Compared to the previous longboat tribe expeditions, there were fewer people. But after this trip, things would be different. The longboat tribe would gradually shift their focus. They wouldn't quarrel with other tribes inland. They didn't have time for that. The longboat tribe would be the one to open up the trade route on the sea. Leaving this continent where their ancestors had lived for generations, the people of Taiha looked at the scenery in the distance and felt rather emotional. Of course, it was only a temporary feeling. Tribes like them who had merged with the Fire Seed had migrated many times throughout history. They would feel reluctant to leave a place, but it wouldn't be that strong. As long as they felt that the future would be better, that complicated feeling of reluctance would quickly fade away. With more people, they couldn't always rely on the supplies on the ships. As long as they had time, the people on the ships would try to catch some small fish from the water. Sometimes they used nets, sometimes they just fished. The medicine they made in advance also prevented some diseases from happening. Xiao Xian reminded Mu Fa of this when they went out to sea. Mu Fa was very grateful to Xiao Xian. After all, the longboat tribe's rich experience was limited to the rivers inland. The rivers and the sea were very different. Just like when they came, they encountered bad weather on the way back. Many of the Taiha tribesmen couldn't get used to it. After they got through it, they were depressed for a few days. They could only take medicine every day. Sometimes Qing, he would go into the water. Even though the water was still cold, he had swum in frozen rivers and seas before they set off. He didn't care about the cold anymore. The only thing he had to be careful of were the dangerous creatures in the sea. Today, it was another sunny day. The sea was still calm. There were only gusts of weak wind blowing. Jiao! The eagle's cry in the sky surprised Xiao Xian, who was looking at the map. He took the binoculars and climbed to the observation platform on the mast to look into the distance. "What's going on?" asked Mu Fa. There was only one binoculars. No matter how good Mu Fa's eyesight was, it couldn't compare to the giant mountain eagle's binoculars. Xiao Xian looked into the distance. He didn't see any dangerous sea creatures, but he saw many pieces of ice. There's a lot of ice in front. Be careful. They didn't see any icebergs. They didn't know where the ice came from. There were many of them, big and small. However, probably because they kept melting, the size of the ice didn't pose too much of a threat to the ship. Mu Fa asked the ship to slow down. When the ice floes got closer, he saw something in the ice. He took the net and scooped up the ice. After looking at it carefully, he saw that there was an insect in the ice. It looked like a beetle, about the size of a fist. He didn't know what kind of insect it was. He had never seen it before. If it was in the past, Mu Fa wouldn't be interested in these beetles. However, it was different now. They found it in the sea. Who knew if it was something from the sea? It didn't look like it. How did you know it wasn't from the sea? Scoop it up. Scoop it up and bring it back to show the people in the tribe. After a pause, Mu Fa thought of something and said to Xiao Xian, "Don't fight with me." The Yinjiao people weren't interested at first, but seeing Mu Fa like this, they became interested. Duo Kong pointed at the ice and shouted to the Yinjiao people, "Scoop up a few for us to see." Chapter 703. Seeing that Yinjiao was fishing, the longboat tribe moved even faster. The Taiha tribesmen heard the commotion and came out to see what was going on, even though they were exhausted. After a while, they even helped. The longboat tribe had many boats, but the Taiha tribesmen were definitely helping Yinjiao. Seeing so many Taiha tribesmen helping Yinjiao, Mu Fa was furious. The Taiha tribesmen could cross the sea only because of the longboat tribe's boats. How ungrateful! No matter how angry Mu Fa was, it was the truth. The Taiha tribesmen were all on Yinjiao's side. Pieces of ice with unknown things inside were scooped up. Some had only one small thing inside. Some had several worms inside. And there were also small animals and things like fish inside. What's frozen inside? Duo Kong was curious. Through the ice, he could roughly see what was inside. However, even though he had lived in the forest for a long time and had seen a lot of things, he did not recognize any of the things inside the ice. He had never seen anything like this before. At least, he had never seen anything like this before. I've never seen anything like this before either. Although Guang, he was face-blind, he still had some impressions of animals. However, he did not remember seeing these worms and beasts before. The Taiha tribe's chief, Yu, shook his head. They had never seen anything like this before either. "Hey, Longboat tribe, have you seen anything like this before?" Duo Kong looked at a Longboat tribe tribesman. "No, never seen anything like this before. It must be from the sea." The Longboat tribe warrior was overjoyed. He felt like his chief was right. It was definitely from the sea. Otherwise, who would be so bored as to freeze worms and palm-sized animals? To the Longboat tribe, everything in the sea was new and strange. They needed to explore. These were all treasures. How can this be from the sea? It looks like it should be living in the grass or the forest, Duo Kong said disapprovingly as he looked at the ice. He wasn't sure about some, but based on the appearance of some, he could deduce where they lived based on what he saw and heard in the forest. What they looked like was related to their living environment. It was impossible for them to look like stone worms and fly in the sky. But where did these come from? Where was he originally born? Yu was also very puzzled. If it was just one type, it wouldn't be a big deal. However, the Taiha, Flaming Horn, and Longboat tribes had never seen any of these frozen insects and beasts before. None of them knew any of them. Xiao Xian looked in the direction where the ice flows came from. It was the wind that had pushed the ice flows in this direction. When they came out, the wind at sea was different from now. Even though there were frequent changes, the wind still had a main direction. Now, it was probably because winter was leaving, so the ice flows were pushed in this direction. In the direction where the floating ice flow had come from, there might be even more floating ice flows further away. However, now wasn't the time to look for floating ice. Their main priority was to return safely. The fleet didn't change course. They only slowed down for the time being and scooped up the frozen objects to take a look. Some of the floating ice had melted, exposing some of the insects and beasts inside. They had been bitten by the fish in the sea and were badly damaged and rotten. On the other hand, the ones frozen in the ice were still in perfect condition. They were two extremes. Those that were exposed would rot and be eaten, while those that were frozen would remain in their original state. Most of the things they fished up were completely frozen ice cubes. Those that were half-rotten or had bite marks, even if they were fished up, they would only look at them curiously before throwing them back into the sea. Rumor has it that that direction is an extremely cold place, Yu suddenly said. An extremely cold place? Xiao Xian asked. That's what I saw in the notes left behind by our Taiha ancestors. I didn't think of it before, but when I saw you looking in that direction, I suddenly thought of it. Yu said, We have never been there, so we don't know what it's like. Our ancestors only heard about it, so there aren't many records. Since it's an extremely cold place, there must be very few people there. That's why people rarely talk about it. The weather was bad, and the climate was unsuitable for survival. With so few people, no one was willing to go there. Naturally, things about that place would gradually disappear, and people would no longer mention it. Yu had inadvertently flipped through the notes while waiting for the reply letter. At that time, he didn't pay much attention to it. The world was big, and they couldn't go to every place. Therefore, they only paid attention to things related to themselves and their tribe. He just didn't expect to encounter something like this. When he heard Yu mention the extremely cold place, Xiao Xian had a guess. Regardless of whether there was an extremely cold place or not, if what Yu said was true, and the rumor the Taihe ancestors heard was also true, then there must be icebergs in that place, and these small pieces might have been split off from the icebergs. However, Xiao Xian guessed that the most likely cause was a disaster that caused the icebergs to break away from their main bodies and float on the sea. If the temperature was low and the icebergs were big, then they could exist for a long time. These pieces might have come from one of the icebergs. As for how the icebergs split into so many small pieces, there were too many possible reasons, and they didn't know. You've swum in the sea before. Have you seen these before? These should be creatures that live in the water, Duo Kong said as he pointed at two of the creatures with fins. No, I haven't seen them in the river either. He squatted at the side and looked at the strange-looking insects and beasts curiously. Duo Kong saw that Xiao Xian seemed to be deep in thought, so he asked, Xiao Xian, what do you think? Guang Yi, Yu and the others all looked at Xiao Xian, waiting for Xiao Xian's answer. These? Xiao Xian pointed at a few pieces of ice that looked like insects and beasts. He said, these might not be things that live in the present. What do you mean? Mu Fa walked over. They might have existed a long, long time ago, Xiao Xian said. A long time ago? How long is a long time? Mu Fa asked. It could be tens of thousands of years, hundreds of thousands, millions, tens of millions, or even longer. Xiao Xian's words made Mu Fa, Duo Kong, and the others gasp. No matter how much they thought about it, they wouldn't have thought of this. 10,000 years was enough for them. Many tribes only left traces from that time. But hundreds of thousands, millions, tens of millions, or even longer, this shocked them. If someone else said this, Mu Fa, Duo Kong, and the others would definitely think that person was spouting nonsense. But this was Xiao Xian. Was Xiao Xian wrong when it came to guessing so many things? That long. Duo Kang's voice trembled at the end. Had these things existed even longer than the ancestors? These are all dead, right? Mu Fa pointed at the frozen beasts on the ground and said, isn't that obvious? How can they still be alive after being frozen for so long? Duo Kong glanced around and picked up a piece of ice that had already melted to the point where its fur was exposed. He had someone light a torch to speed up the melting process. As the ice melted, the strange furry creature that was about the size of an adult warrior's palm appeared in front of everyone. Without the interference of the ice, they could see the strange creature more clearly. Have these really existed for a long time? It doesn't seem to have changed much, Duo Kong sighed. Dead, Guang Yi confirmed. It's injured. It was pierced by a sharp weapon, Duo Kong said as he looked at the strange creature. They then took the half-eaten insect beast that had been bitten by the fish in the sea. After melting the remaining ice with fire, they found that a few of them had similar wounds on their bodies. The insects with carapaces had been pierced through the neck. The fish and prawns had been pierced through as well. The wounds were similar. Duo Kong cut open the small beast that had been melted and found that there was still some undigested food in its stomach. Yu said that it was probably some kind of grass. What killed them? Duo Kong asked. Who knows? They must have been killed by the beasts that ate them. But now's not the time to think about that. Mu Fa said as he had the Longboat tribe put the ice together. He scooped up some ice floes that didn't contain anything else to keep the temperature low. Meat kept in a cold cave would last longer. These unknown insects that might have come from ancient times needed to be kept in ice to survive, just like how they had been frozen until now. Duo Kong did the same. He wanted to bring some back as a souvenir, so he ordered the people to continue scooping. Xiao Xian looked at the ice from Yinjiao and the longboat tribe before looking at the sea. There was still a lot of ice. Some had things sealed in it, some didn't. Some had things similar to what they had scooped up. Looking at the ice floes, Xiao Xian suddenly pointed at one of them and said to the people scooping, "Scoop that one up." "Which one are you talking about, Great Elder?" The people scooping the ice didn't know which one Xiao Xian was talking about. "Let me do it." Xiao Xian did it himself. He took the net and scooped up the piece of ice he fancied. "What is this?" Duo Kong looked at the blurry lump in the ice and asked. They scooped up the ice. Because the boat could only carry a limited amount of weight, they couldn't scoop up all the ice. They could only scoop up a little. They scooped up the ice that they could roughly see. They didn't want to waste so much effort only to find out that it was just a lump of dirt. That wouldn't be worth it. Therefore, the piece of ice that Xiao Xian was pointing at had been ignored. They didn't even scoop up the same type. They already had one, so why would they want more? Anyway, they were just curious and wanted to bring it back as a souvenir. "I don't know what it is either." Xiao Xian looked at the ice in front of him. After looking at it a few more times, he handed it to the person in charge of storing it. "Bring it back with the other ice." Since it was something that Xiao Xian scooped up, the person in charge of storing it didn't dare to be careless. Even if it was just a lump of dirt, they would treat it seriously and carefully. Chapter 704. On the way back, Xiao Xian would check on the ice blocks every few days, as well as the animals that had been frozen for who knows how long. The reason why Xiao Xian picked the ice block was because the bones in the ice block were the best preserved. Before leaving the tribe, Xiao Xian had been studying the desert monster he got from the Hui tribe. He figured out some of its secrets, but he didn't have the time to test it out. So this time, Xiao Xian planned to test his theory on the ancient beast corpses sealed in the ice. The people of Rock Hill City turned the dead into monsters. The most important thing was the bones. The monsters were dead, but they could still move. Their bones were what supported them. Xiao Xian could see the bones of the animals through the ice blocks. The other animals in the ice blocks either had no bones or their bones were dim. Only the bones in the ice block were brighter in Xiao Xian's special vision. This meant that the bones weren't seriously damaged, and they might even be more active. The more active they were, the higher Xiao Xian's chances of success. The one sealed in the ice block didn't look like anything special. The creature inside seemed to be curled up into a ball. Xiao Xian couldn't tell what kind of animal it was, but it didn't matter. The ice blocks they fished up should be able to last until they landed. As long as they saw land, they could get more ice from the mountains to replace the melted water. "How long until we reach?" Duo Kong asked Xiao Xian. Winter was over and the moon was out. They definitely wouldn't be able to make it in time for the tribe's sacrifice. Xiao Xian looked at the direction the universal eye was facing and estimated the time they would be at sea. "Soon. At our current speed, we should be able to see land in 10 days. "That's good." Life on the sea was too boring. Duo Kong felt his bones itch and wanted to move around. He still preferred the mountains and forests. The Taiha tribe was also dispirited because they weren't used to it. Only the people of the Longboat tribe were still in a state of excitement. 10 days later, following the eagle's cry in the sky, everyone's mind shook. "We're here." Duo Kong, who had been sleeping, quickly climbed onto the observatory and looked ahead with his binoculars. "Huh, they had arrived. We see land." Duo Kong laughed as he shouted down. Many of the dispirited Taiha people also came out and looked ahead. They couldn't see the land yet, but since Duo Kong said that it was right in front of them, they were very excited. For them, this was the beginning of a new life. "How's your language and writing these days?" "It's all right. Normal communication is no problem. We'll be more familiar with each other in the future." It was rare for the Taiha people to chat and laugh with the Yinjiao soldiers. Xiao Xian looked at the wooden compartments in the cabin. Originally, they were filled with ice, but now 99% of it had melted. Only a little bit of ice was left floating on top. The various insects and beasts that were frozen in the ice were also lying in the water. If they didn't land soon, they would rot and stink in less than 2 days. In fact, some of them were already starting to smell. There were no children or people who hadn't awakened their totemic power on this ship. On this ship, there were only 3 to 5 people who could enter, and they were all strong people with strong resistance to diseases. He ordered people to seal up the melted wooden compartments. Once they landed, they would bring them to the snowy mountains. There were eagle cries in the sky, but they weren't Cha-Cha's cries. They were from other giant mountain eagles. "There are people from the Hui tribe here," Xiao Xian heard one of the cries and said. He was familiar with that cry. It was the Hui tribe's Gu-La's eagle named Shan Dao. As the fleet continued to move forward, the land became clearer. They could see the tall mountains and the eagles flying in the sky. Xiao Xian let Cha-Cha bring him over first. "You're finally back." Gula stood on Shan Dao's back and shouted when he saw Xiao Xian and Cha-Cha flying over. "When did you arrive?" Xiao Xian asked. "The chief said he was worried that you wouldn't be able to find anyone after you came back. So after you left, people would come here every day. Even in winter, sometimes people would follow, sometimes they would send a few eagles. Now that winter is over, we would also come here. I didn't expect to see you today." Gula looked at the fleet on the sea. "There are too many ships." "Yes, we built 5 new ships. One of them ran into some problems on the way. So now there are only 24 ships in total," Xiao Xian explained. On the way back, they encountered a hunting sea beast. It crashed into the ship and made it half-scrapped. It wouldn't sink for a while, but it couldn't continue sailing. After transferring the people on that ship, the remaining 24 ships continued to sail, which was what Gula saw now. "Did you get the people?" Gula asked again. "Yes, but they're not used to life on the sea. Their mental state isn't very good, so they need to rest for a few days before setting off again. We found a suitable place to rest nearby. It's a cave. Although it can't fit everyone, it can fit about 500 people. A cave that can fit 500 people? That's enough," Xiao Xian said. He let the people in the worst condition rest in the cave. The others either stayed on the ship or found a place to rest outside the cave. Totemic warriors had good resistance to the cold. When they finally touched solid ground, the exhausted Taiha people quickly recovered. They even curiously conversed with the people from the Hui tribe. They weren't familiar with the language here, so they spoke slowly. Since the Taiha people in Yinjiao were allies, and the Hui tribe in Yinjiao were allies, the allies of allies were also allies. That was why Gu La and the others were very friendly to the Taiha people. They caught some fresh beasts and brought them over. Xiao Xian asked Cha-Cha to bring the wooden boxes of ice to the snow-covered mountains. There were many mountains nearby, and he wasn't sure if it was because the temperature hadn't risen in this season, but half of them were covered in white. On the colder mountain peaks, the melted water turned into ice again, freezing the insects and beasts. Xiao Xian wore a pair of gloves made of animal hide and washed away the mud on the surface of the unknown creature he scooped up from the ice. Surprisingly, the mud was still tightly wrapped around the creature. As the mud was washed away bit by bit, the creature that Xiao Xian couldn't see clearly was finally completely exposed in front of him. Wings? Xiao Xian looked at the wing-like thing that was wrapped around the creature. There were some thin and short hairs on the wings. Xiao Xian pulled the wings but couldn't move them. He didn't want to force them open either, so he stopped. Instead, he looked at the sharp claws that were exposed. It was the same as a bat's. It was attached to the wings like a hook. Thinking of the fatal wounds on the insects and beasts he found in the ice, he looked at the claws again. Perhaps the wounds on the insects and beasts were caused by these claws. After looking at it for a while, Xiao Xian placed it in a wooden box and covered it with a wooden cover. When he came back tomorrow, it would be frozen again. Chapter 705. Other than the insects and beasts, the fleet also prepared some ice before they left. After coming back, although they hadn't reached the tribe yet, they no longer had the feeling of uneasiness that they had when they were at sea. After resting for a few days, the fleet set off again. In the sky, the people of the Hui tribe escorted them all the way with their giant mountain eagles. They didn't want to encounter any curious giant mountain eagles. Those curious or aggressive giant mountain eagles might cause a lot of trouble for the fleet. With the people of the Hui tribe in the middle, this kind of situation would be reduced a lot. Cha-Cha and the others used to go to Eagle Mountain from here, right? Xiao Xian asked Gula, I don't know. We can't follow the giant mountain eagles to Eagle Mountain, but they probably went this way, Gula said. Maybe it wasn't at the estuary. The giant mountain eagles probably went over the mountains and took a detour. At that time, the disaster hadn't happened yet. The dangerous river was still there, so Cha-Cha and the others wouldn't have gone there. In the past, the people of the Hui tribe thought that Eagle Mountain was in the depths of the mountains. They didn't expect that it wasn't here. It was in the area full of fearsome beasts where Yin Jiao lived. When the fleet left the mountains and the giant mountain eagle's habitat, the people of the Hui tribe didn't need to follow them anymore. After bidding farewell, the fleet followed the river on the grassland and went back the way they came. The people of Taihe were much more energetic after resting. Plus, they weren't at sea anymore, so they felt more at ease. They looked at the grassland tribes curiously. Those who were more sensitive could even sense the ancient fire seed. Is it the ancient fire seed? It's amazing. Yu sighed. The Taihe tribe had merged their fire seed a long time ago. There were no more ancient fire seeds on the other side of the sea. They didn't expect to sense it when they came here. Huge power. Even if it was just a fire seed from a small tribe, the power it contained could not be ignored. We can still sense it now, but in a few years, it might be hard to see it again. Duo Kong told you about the changes that were happening here. As the major tribes on the mainland merged their fire seeds one after another, the people of the Hui tribe said that many medium-sized tribes had also started to merge their fire seeds. Perhaps in 5 or 10 years, the small tribes would also start to experience similar changes. Duo Kong excitedly told the Taihe people about the flaming river trading point. Since they were back, they didn't have to worry too much anymore. Life on the ship was very monotonous. After returning, there wasn't much danger, and the trouble they encountered was also much less. Many people on the riverbank were relieved to see that it was the longboat tribe's fleet. Why did he sigh in relief? Last year, when they saw the longboat tribe's huge ship leave, they didn't see them return until winter. They thought that something had happened to the longboat tribe. It wasn't that they were worried about the longboat people. They were just used to watching the fleet leave and then return. Last year, they had only seen the fleet that had left. They had waited for an entire winter, but they had not seen the fleet return. They always felt that there was something unfinished in their hearts. Now, they finally had peace of mind. Some people felt that it was a pity. If the longboat tribe's fleet had met with an accident, it would definitely be big news. After all, the longboat tribe was known as the strongest tribe on the river. It was rare to see them get into an accident on the river. While Duo Kong was explaining the situation around the flaming river to Yu and the others, Xiao Xian was in the cabin looking at the newly frozen ice cubes. He didn't care about the rest. Duo Kong had just taken him out to sea because they were new to him. He wanted to show them to the people in his tribe who couldn't go out to sea. After all, these were things from a long, long time ago. After seeing them, they couldn't keep them sealed forever. They didn't have the ability to keep them in their original state. The Yin Jiao people also wouldn't spend so much time and effort to preserve things that weren't useful to them. Hence, after seeing them, they probably ended up as fertilizer or thrown into swamps or tar pits. What caught Xiao Xian's attention was the thing he had scooped up. After refreezing it, Xiao Xian didn't notice it when he was moving the wooden box. Now that he had time to take a closer look, he noticed that the bones of the thing seemed to have changed. No, it wasn't just the bones. There were other parts as well. Xiao Xian felt a very weak life force. That aura was too faint. If it was left there after the ice melted, that tiny bit of life aura might disappear completely. Hence, he didn't know what this thing was, but it was in a state close to death. It wasn't much different from death. Xiao Xian wanted to find out immediately, but this wasn't the right place. They were on a ship. If he wasn't careful and something happened, the ship might be damaged. That would hinder their return journey. Xiao Xian wasn't in a hurry. He just wanted to confirm his guess. When they returned to the Flaming River trading point, the conditions there would be more suitable for him to quietly tinker with these things. Looking at the ice cube, Xiao Xian sighed. He closed the wooden lid and took out a light gray linen cloth. Then, he used a charcoal rod to draw on it. He drew a skeleton made from the bones he saw. He remembered the skeleton's appearance in his special vision. He drew the skeleton onto the cloth and then disassembled it bit by bit. After disassembling it, he felt that it didn't look good enough, so he found some wood and used a knife to cut it into small sticks. Then, he cut the sticks into the general shape of each bone. Some small bones might be omitted, but the main skeleton would be disassembled and made into wooden bones. After he was done, Xiao Xian started piecing the wooden bones together one by one. First, the head. This was the most obvious part. Starting from the head, he pieced the bones together bit by bit. When he didn't know which bone to join, he would start with another obvious feature, the tail. Then, he would start from the tail. If he had trouble with both the head and tail, he would start with the back claws. Once Xiao Xian was immersed in his work, he would easily lose track of time. He rarely left in the middle. After Duo Kong finished talking to Yu Yu and the rest, he looked around and didn't see Xiao Xian. He asked around and found out that Xiao Xian had gone to the place where the ice cube was kept, so he went to look for him. The door was closed. Duo Kong stood at the door and called out softly, "Xiao Xian? Grand Elder?" No one answered. After a pause, Duo Kong raised his hand and knocked lightly on the door. "Xiao Xian, are you in there?" "Yes." Xiao Xian, who was inside, finally came back to his senses. He had been staring at the pieced-together product for a long time. He didn't even hear Duo Kong when he first called him. After Duo Kong entered, the first thing he saw was a skeleton on top of the wooden box. The skeleton was very strange. At first glance, he thought it was a bat, but he quickly realized that it wasn't. It was a different skeleton from a bat. It gave off a more arrogant feeling. After hunting for so long, even if it was just a skeleton, Duo Kong had a rough idea of what it was. "What is this?" Duo Kong pointed at the unfamiliar skeleton and asked Xiao Xian, "I've never seen this before. It's not a bird or a bat. What is this?" Xiao Xian rubbed his sore eyes and said, "Pterosaur." Chapter 706. Pterosaur. Duo Kong was confused. Obviously, this was the first time he had heard of this name. What's a pterosaur? A bird? Duo Kong looked curiously at the skeleton that wasn't very detailed. The more he looked, the tighter his frown became. This doesn't look like a normal bird. If it was bigger, it could be very dangerous. This was only a rough skeleton. As for what the bones were like, how hard they were, and how the muscles were distributed, all of these would affect their judgment of the beast. Therefore, Duo Kong could only give a vague guess. They're different from birds. They probably existed even before the formation of the tribes. Xiao Xian didn't know when the tribes were formed in this world. What he said was still just a guess. Xiao Xian had once wondered if there were other creatures living here in the distant past, before the tribes were formed and before humans occupied the majority of the land. Because there were no records, Xiao Xian didn't think too much about it. After all, the present and the future were the most important. And now, they discovered these things from the ice floes on the sea. All of them reminded Xiao Xian that a long, long time ago, there might have been things that no one knew about. There might have been creatures that no one knew existed. Maybe because of the limited civilization back then, the people who existed back then couldn't record those things. There might be more ice floes in the sea than the ones they found, and it might not have happened this year. It might have happened often, but no one had ever scooped them up. They just let the ice melt and enter the stomachs of the fish beasts in the sea. And this batch was fished up by a passing fleet. The other insects and beasts in the ice were also from the same time period as this pterosaur. Then, in the extremely cold place that Yu mentioned, were there more frozen animals that existed in the ancient times? If there was a chance, Xiao Xian wanted to go and take a look. There might be dinosaurs. Of course, now wasn't the time to think so much. Since he could roughly guess what was in the ice from the skeleton, Xiao Xian thought about his future plans. When he returned, he would definitely try it out on this creature. "What's the matter?" Xiao Xian asked Duo Kong. Duo Kong looked away from the wooden skeleton and snapped back to reality. It's the Taiha tribe. I showed them the map of the Flaming River trading point and the headquarters of the tribe. I asked them where they wanted to live. They said they wanted to live in a place similar to the Flaming Horn tribe. They would also let some of their people enter the trading point. After all, they have a lot of things to trade throughout the year. The people of Taiha were good at discovering and growing herbs. In the past, they would only travel 2 or 3 times a year to trade because they were too far away from the cities. Only in the cities could they trade for more goods. Therefore, every year, they would process the herbs and store them. Then, they would wait until a certain time to sell all the accumulated herbs. But now there was no need for that. Yinjiao had its own trading zone, and the people from Taiha could bring the goods over to trade whenever they had any. It was very convenient. Oh, that's it. Xiao Xian didn't think that Duo Kong would come over just because of this. When they decided to persuade the Taiha tribe to move over, the higher-ups of the tribe had already predicted their choice. Everything was within their expectations. Hey, there's one more thing. Duo Kong smiled and rubbed his hands together in anticipation. You said that our Yinjiao trading point would expand? That's right. Xiao Xian nodded. With the Taiha people joining us, can we expand? Duo Kang's eyes were filled with anticipation. That depends on whether the trading point can be stabilized. We will definitely expand, but there's no rush. We've already put up Yinjiao's stone tablets wherever the king's stoneworm passed. We've marked out the territory and built the foundation. It will be a waste if we don't use it. Wherever the king's stoneworm passed, a large part of the ground had already turned into stone. It was very stable to build houses on top of it. They could even use the stone to build roads. Of course, the plan was beautiful, but it had to be done step by step. It had to be stable. They didn't want others to take advantage of the expansion. Duo Kong understood Xiao Xian's concerns. He just wanted to confirm how long the plan would take. After the fleet arrived at the Longboat tribe, they rested for a few days in the Longboat tribe. They still needed the Longboat tribe's ships, so they continued to sail along the river. Mu Fa and the others brought back many plants and beasts from another continent. Even though they didn't like the taste of the plants and the size of the beast meat, they were all treated as rare treasures by the Longboat tribe because they were brought back from another continent by the fleet. The Longboat tribesmen who returned from the sea looked very different from the Longboat tribesmen who stayed in the tribe. They were more arrogant, fierce, and dangerous. When they joked, their eyes shone with undisguised ambition. That was the change after the sea. In the near future, as more and more Longboat tribesmen left the tribe for the sea, this change would spread to the entire tribe. The Longboat tribesmen would no longer be the Longboat tribesmen everyone knew. Mu Fa and the others didn't continue to follow the fleet. Instead, another group of people followed. Before the fleet set off again, Mu Fa reminded the Longboat tribesmen not to forget to bring back more wood from Yinjiao. Don't worry, Chief. We won't forget, the leader promised. They also wanted to sail far away. They definitely had to continue building ships, so they wouldn't neglect the wood used to build ships. After setting off from the Longboat tribe, the fleet continued to sail along the river towards the Flaming River. During this time, many mid-sized tribes in the central region had successfully merged their fire seeds. However, there was also one that failed. Failure meant the extinction of the tribe. Xiao Xian didn't know why they failed. He only heard from the Longboat tribesmen that there was an accident during the merging process. The tribe shaman was killed at the most crucial moment, too. There wasn't enough time to choose a successor. Our shaman said it might be the people from the desert, said the Longboat tribe warrior who led the team. His first reaction would be to guess that it was the people from the other side of the sea. However, if he thought about it carefully, the possibility of it being Rock Hill City wasn't small either. After all, they needed slaves. A tribesman who lost his fire seed would become a wanderer. Wanderers were the best slaves. Xiao Xian didn't know the truth for now. Before he knew the details, he felt that the people from Rock Hill City and the other side of the sea were very likely to be the culprits. The Longboat shaman naturally had his reasons for guessing. However, what the Longboat shaman didn't know was that even totemic warriors could be turned into monsters after death. Wanderers weren't absolutely necessary. When they finally returned to Yinjiao, the weather was much warmer. To show their welcome to their old friends, Yinjiao hosted another banquet at the trading point. However, they didn't invite the big tribes this time. The main guests were Yinjiao and Taihe. Wu He and the other four who were locked up in Yinjiao were finally released. The Taihe tribe had come over. According to their agreement, they were free too. Wu He and the other four were overjoyed to finally regain their freedom. Although they tried their best to negotiate terms with Yinjiao in exchange for a more comfortable environment, that was only compared to the beginning. Although they still felt cold during this past winter, Yinjiao's animal hides were good and kept them warm. Even so, it couldn't alleviate their boredom and loneliness. Being trapped in a cramped cave was a great torture for the Changlu people. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.